We invite everyone to please be seated. Our program begins. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see some of our guests are already settled in, and more are coming in. So for today's Micro-Enterprise Forum, we're all very grateful to, of course, our speakers, our valued guests, and even our colleagues that are here present today, to be able to empower MSMEs and to generate opportunities. So for today's theme, we shall be having 7 speakers. And of course, later on, the Manila Times columnist Ben Kritz will be giving them key questions about how we can possibly achieve our theme for today. Now, some of you might also know that Ben has his opinion column. So take note about the kind of discussions that we'll be having in our first and second fireside chats for today. Now, it's not enough that MSMEs comprise the backbone of the country's gross domestic product and employment index, but you see that these MSMEs should be boosted with public-private partnerships, pumped with local and foreign direct investments, and even supplemented with mentorship from thought leaders in order to be empowered and generate ecosystems of growth. So we look forward to hearing how our 7 thought leaders today will be able to give us ideas, blueprints, or roadmaps on these. But before we proceed to our first message, allow me to introduce a thought leader in our very own media and communications industry, who will give the welcoming remarks. Now, an advocate of women empowerment and inclusivity, she is a multi-awarded woman of substance and an active member of the Filipino CEO Circle, and an all-female network of successful women that have risen from the ranks to reach the top positions in their companies. So all are bound by the desire to help other young women to succeed. She is the Manila Times President and Chief Operating Officer, or COO. Esteemed guests and attendees, let's give a round of applause for Ms. Blanca Calilong Mercado.
Distinguished speakers, esteemed guests, valued partners, trusted colleagues, and beloved friends, good morning. It is always pleasant to see familiar and new faces here. It is my privilege and pleasure this time to welcome all of you here at Ascott Makati, the Manila Times Micro-Enterprise Forum 2024, titled Empowering MSMEs, Generating Opportunities. Our title of theme today is meant to back up the backbone of the Philippine economy, namely micro, small, and medium enterprises, or MSMEs, which comprise 99.59% of commercial endeavors across the archipelago. I don't want to be called on by our DTI people here, but this is according to 2022 data from the PSA. So last year, barely 5 months ago, the Microenterprise Forum of the Manila Times talked about the growing MSMEs, nurturing prosperity, where we had speakers from the mentoring and the financing, food and franchising, telecom, connectivity, and beauty and wellness industries. But this time, we wanted to be different. Many of you here are part of enterprises that are no longer considered micro or small, or even medium size, because among other reasons, you and your colleagues have attended a lot of our fora in the past, such as ours, and listen to our advice of experts in order to grow and nurture your businesses. I hope you all agree with that. This year, our speakers are from the Senate of the Philippines, the Department of Trade and Industry, the Friends of Hope, the Asian Institute of Management, the Science Center of the Philippines, the International Workplace Group, and the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands. Now, you are probably eager to hear all of them, but please indulge me in extending the gratitude of the Times to our loyal partners. More and more rare qualities that these days, I'm sure you'll all agree, who have helped us empower and generate our forum today. Gratitude goes out to our sponsor, Infiniban, our special partners, Airspeed, Palawan Pay, SM Group, and SM Supermalls, and as I've mentioned before, Ascott Makati as our venue partner. Our patron sponsors are Bayview Park Hotel and Niam Agency. And of course, our media partners, iEvents, Rising Tigers Magazine, and the Manila Times TV. Of course, thank you to our valued organization partners as well, BMAP, British Chamber, French Chamber, Cebu Chamber, CREBA, Davao Chamber, the FINEX, the Italian Chamber, IDCP, La Camara, I hope you said it the way it should be said. They're all here today. MAP, Nordic Chamber, One World Media, PCCI, NCR, Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy, and She Talks Peace. And thank you all very much for being part of the conversation of the Manila Times, led by our Senator Legarda, Undersecretary Roque, Ilusion Farias, Jamil Francisco, Rhea Matute, who's here today also, Lars Wittig, Jose Yulo, here also, and about empowering MSMEs, generating opportunities. Marami pong salamat, magandang umaga, and more power and opportunities for all of us here today.
Thank you, Ms. Blanca, for the welcoming remarks. And with that, let's proceed with our first keynote message. Our first speaker is the author and principal sponsor of the Magna Carta for Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises, or Republic Act 9501. She has many other legislative achievements to improve the lives of Filipinos, particularly in the areas of environmental protection, climate change, mitigation, cultural preservation, and other measures aimed at promoting inclusive and sustainable development. Now, prior to providing public service, of course, she was a multi-award winning and respected broadcast journalist. And today, she is a member of the Senate of the Philippines, and in that capacity, she has a message for all of us. So let us all listen to her words for us today.
The Magna Carta for MSMEs, of which I am the author and principal sponsor, was envisioned to create an environment conducive to the success of our MSMEs. Yet, as encapsulated by our theme today, empowering MSMEs, generating opportunities, our work has not ended. As your four-term senator, I have led various legislative initiatives to improve MSMEs' access to finance, technology, markets, capacity building programs. These include the Barangay Livelihood and Skills Training Act, 2008, Go Negosyo Act 2014, Philippine Innovation Act in 2019. This 19th Congress, I am pleased with the passage of the One Town, One Product or OTOP Philippines Act, of which I'm the principal author and co-sponsor. This law nurtures a culture of creativity and innovation within the MSME sector. facilitating the growth of MSMEs across the countryside by developing indigenous raw materials, utilizing local skills and talents, and featuring local traditions and cultures across the country, allowing for inclusive local economic growth. Beyond these legislative actions, I've actively supported various programs to expand the sector's market reach and boost job creation. These include the Dole Kabuhayan, which provides livelihood assistance for groups or individuals, DTI Shared Services Facilities, which promotes competitiveness of MSMEs by offering access to essential technology. I've passionately spearheaded the DTI's annual National Arts and Crafts Fair to date, from 2016 till the present, which resumed last year after a hiatus due to the pandemic, serving as a platform to celebrate our rich cultural heritage by showcasing products from community-based MSMEs across the country. My fellow Filipinos, as we reflect on our achievements and look forward to the work still to be done, let us remember that the true measure of our success lies not only in economic indicators, but in transforming lives in our communities. By choosing to support MSMEs, we are putting confidence in the dreams and aspirations of our fellow Filipinos for a better future. Rest assured that I am with you in forging ahead for the cause of our micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Maraming salamat po. Isang lunti ang Pilipinas sa ating lahat.
So we are grateful for Senator Legarda for, despite being unable to join us today, to have a special message for all of us. At the same time, we are also thankful for her setting the tone for this morning's discussion and talks. And with that, our second speaker leads the execution of the government's programs and initiatives for MSMEs. And she also oversees operations of the Cooperative Development Authority and the Small Business Corporation. She supervises the Bureau of Small and Medium Enterprise and what Senator Legarda mentioned earlier, the OTOP Program Management Office, as well as the Bureau of Marketing Development and Promotions. So there's a whole lot of organizational interaction going on under her watch. And she does all these as the Undersecretary for the Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome DTI Undersecretary Maria Cristina Roque.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It is with great pleasure and enthusiasm that I stand before you today at the Manila Times Microenterprise Forum. The theme, Empowering MSME, Generating Opportunities, resonates deeply with the core mission of the Department of Trade and Industry as we strive to unlock the full potential of micro, small, and medium enterprises in our nation. DTI has many programs and services to scale up the Philippine MSMEs, but today allow me to focus on certain key strategies that we need to strengthen for our approach towards MSME advancement and development. Number one is the digitalization. We are 7,600 islands, and the only way for us to be able to get the message across, to be able to sell, to be able to get in touch with each other, and to be able to disseminate information is through digitalization. We are already open to the global world, so we must adopt digitalization. If we talk about the micro enterprises, they can use digitalizations as a tool for them to be able to sell and to promote their products, as this is actually the cheapest way, through TikTok, through YouTube selling, to Facebook and Instagram selling. But for the small and medium enterprises, they can use these digitalization platforms for them to be able to showcase and for them to be able to advance their products. Number two, diversification. Diversification is another important strategy that must be used by the MSME in order for them to grow. Why diversification? Because as Warren Buffett said, we can never just rely on a single income. A double income or a second source is always better. Diba they always say, pag single ang kita ng family, if anything happens to, let's say, the father, then the family suffers. But if it's a double income family, if anything happens to one of them, the family still survives. So it's the same thing with business. I think if you look at the tycoons, let's just say Jollibee, they started long time ago with burger. Then after that, they started to diversify to Chicken Joy. Only then did they realize that Chicken Joy was selling more than burgers. And then they diversified to products now that are either interrelated to what they do or totally different products. So this also, actually, I was just in conversation with James Go, and I asked him, this is the brother of John Gokongwei, I asked him, where did you start? Where did the business of the Gokongwei start? He said cornstarch. So their cornstarch, now their grocery, their airlines, their hotels, their land. So all of them started as MSME. So if we start as an MSME, it's not a hopeless case. So we should learn to diversify. Okay, next is to mentoring and learning. The best way we can learn is through mentoring. Why? So we don't make mistakes anymore. So if, example, we want to get into this type of food business, I think we can ask someone to help us by mentoring us. So the mistakes that they made will not be our mistakes again. It will also shorten the time for us to grow. So we can always find mentors. There's a lot of people who want to teach us. We must always remember also that knowledge is power. The more we know, the stronger we become. Then we will never know when we will need this knowledge. So it's always good to keep on learning. And they always said, it's good to have a mentor, especially someone that's been there, done that. And I'm sure they're gonna be willing to help. You just have to keep asking, or you just have to keep finding them. If you go to the Go Negosyo or the Go Negosyo events, there's a lot of mentors there. So you may want to go there, and everyone there is free to help or to mentor the different MSMEs. Another thing is financing. Sometimes the deadlock of an industry is financing. I'm now the chairman of SB Corp. Being the chairman of SB Corp and being from the private sector, I was able to add some of important things to the SB Corp, which is number one, the PO financing, and number two, the rediscounting of the checks. Because before, they were always looking for collaterals. We have to know that when you're micro, you don't have any collateral. Even the aircon is hulugan. Even the clothes are hulugan. Everything now in the Philippines is you can buy hulugan. So the only way for them to grow is for us to be able to finance their POs and to be able to rediscount their checks so that they can get moving. Another thing that we can consider is franchising. Sometimes we get caught up in our business. Let's say we have this business, but now the world is already global. There's so many imported brands coming in, and there are some local brands that are already at par with the global brand. So before we think of investing in something like a startup, maybe we can reconsider, or we can think about franchising depending on the money that we have. Let's just say we have 500,000. For 500,000 pesos, there's a lot of franchising, ace franchising that are available. Win-win for the MSME. That's the Potato Corner and many others. So if you franchise, let's say Potato Corner, then you go to the SB Corp and you want a franchise of Potato Corner, chances for SB Corp is to give you a loan for the franchise rather than for them to give you for a startup. Why? Because of the odds. So for SB Corp, if he loans you for the franchise, it's a win-win. He wins, meaning he'll get paid, and you win, meaning you're going to earn. So we should explore franchising. In closing, I commend the unwavering spirit and resilience of the MSME, the backbone of our economy, as we navigate the challenges and opportunities of today's dynamic business landscape. Let us continue to collaborate, innovate, and empower MSME to create a brighter, more prosperous future for all of us. Together, we can unlock boundless opportunities and possibilities and generate opportunities that fuel inclusive growth and sustainable development. And let's try to stop the pwede, and not stop, okay, let's try to get out of the pwede na attitude as we are already the bagong Pilipinas.
Thank you, Undersecretary Cristina. We will be inviting you later for our question and answer portion during the fireside chat with Ben Kritz. And now for our second speaker, or our third speaker rather, has over 25 years of experience spearheading programs that have been instrumental in transforming industries and become international development templates, particularly in the areas of branding, design, and innovation. Now, in the past, she was the Deputy Executive Director for the Center of International Trade Expositions and Missions, and she is presently the Executive Director of the DTI's Design Center of the Philippines. Ladies and gents, please give a round of applause for Maria Rita Rhea Matute.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Manila Times, Blanca, for the invitation to be here with you this morning to talk about opportunities for MSMEs. I decided to focus in on an area that we're really very passionate about in Design Center, and the kind of, I guess, the inertia that is coming into the Philippines in terms of green entrepreneurship. So just as a background, the Design Center of the Philippines is part of government. We're an attached agency under the Department of Trade and Industry. We celebrated our 50-year anniversary last year. So we were created in 1973, and primarily with the ambition to really help Philippine SMEs. Wala pang M noon, nung 1973. So it's really like originally to help SMEs, particularly mga artisans, to find a way to become formal participants in the national economy. And this is when really the backbone, or like the real origin story of Design Center is really working with farmers, and what parang Yusek Chris mentioned, it's really to help even farmers have a new revenue stream for not just farming, but really maybe using agricultural waste, or like parang the available materials near the farms or in the countryside, to make them into baskets, to make them into furniture, to make them into fashion accessories. So definitely, parang like that additional revenue, additional income is close to the heart of Design Center, and really like a lot of the work that we've done is really with farming communities, with housewives looking to augment the income of the primary breadwinner of the family. Okay.
Oh, you can try pointing there.
Yeah. Okay. So, and not that I need to remind you how hot it's been, but I guess it's really just to put it also in perspective, no? Well, based on an American agency, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, this has been, in the past, it's been a record-breaking temperature for the planet, no? So we have increased from last year by 1.3 degrees Celsius, but in the past, compared to last century, or like the 1900s, I feel so old. Based on the 20th century, we have actually increased 13 degrees, 14 if you round it off, 14 degrees Celsius. So when you think about it, I guess from last year, we only increased by a little over 1 degree. But can you imagine 13 degrees? Comparing pa nga from last year, we already feel so hot, no? So just the magnitude of that change. And then this is also the 11th consecutive month that we've been recording highs in terms of our temperature. Okay. And one of the proof, aside from of course us needing parang like our pamaypays or like our air conditioning, but this one is the one that's most worrying. Actually, I took it out of a Manila Times article. Para hindi ako ma-IP copyright issue rin. So we got this out of a Manila Times article about a settlement in the Pantabangan Dam na nag-surface because of the drought that we're having, and then of course the decreasing water resource that we have. Just as a personal anecdote, even at home, and like I even become the water police in our house. So when in washing dishes, like I make sure there's a little bit more efficiency in the way people wash the dishes, and to make sure not like we use less water or less resources in our everyday lifestyle. Even like when my family members take a shower or when they use the banyo, I keep reminding them I've already put in mga like yung the stop in our tanks at home, para like we don't use too much water when we flush our toilets, or para I time them when they take showers, para like not too long, or when you're shampooing your hair, turn off your shower, para like again, para like just these little things. I know in the big scheme of things you question, parang does it really help, but parang like we all need to start somewhere. Parang like, and just as an anecdote, I went to school with Yusek Chris's cousin, and when we were doing our, I think that was for our theology of liberation class. And then like parang like and we were talking about the Pasig River back then. That was like, I don't know, like mga 30 years ago. And he was saying parang the challenge that he gave, parang like when he ended his presentation, was parang yes, parang like you feel that the challenges of the Pasig River is very difficult. But parang all you need to do is parang like all you need to do is like, parang like you start with a cup of water from the Pasig River. So he gave us all parang back then plastic cups, but parang like that's the challenge, but parang like every little thing counts, and if we all do it together, then that effort is multiplied. So yun yung parang like you say, Chris, that was one of my fondest memories, or parang like we all clapped when Jay made that speech in class. Okay, so talking about lifestyle, so parang like and this is coming from the World Counts. This is a website that really parang like gives you the data, the hard data on what we're doing to the planet. So parang at the current lifestyle that we're how we're living our lives, parang we're taking up 1.73 planet. To maintain that lifestyle. Parang by 2030, they're estimating that it'll be 2 planets already. And by 2050, we will be requiring 3 planets, but we only have 1 planet. So parang it's a little insane when you think about it. Parang like, and therefore, like every dial down on our lifestyle to become more conscious is going to be, it's really going to contribute. The bigger the dial down, of course, the better. The people in the office nga, well, some of them are here, but parang like, I grew up, I never liked air conditioning. This is something, I guess I got it from my grandfather, and then I got it from my father. So I'm not very fond of air conditioning. I call it recycled air, in fact. I prefer a fan, and the fan doesn't point to me, but it just to move the air around. I prefer to have all my windows open, and that for me is that's how I wanna. That's how I enjoy life. No, so parang like so I'm always like this. Parang like when I'm in the office, parang like while people in the office are dressed in 2 layers, siguro like, or parang I'm always dressed in like siguro mga 4 layers, because parang like I'm not very fond of of air conditioning. So maybe parang like, like those little things changing in lifestyle, but of course parang like you choose your own changes, would really help. Parang like, dial down from like 3 planets, 2 planets, and maybe like eventually talagang just enough resources that will make our planet regenerate, no? Okay. And this is where, I guess, from the perspective now of Design Center, and this is basically how we operate, or we try to operate, and this is basically our North Star, and we talk about parang like, not just from the perspective of purpose, people, planet, and prosperity. So it's not just about profit, no? It's really about prosperity, and it's really about a community. And that's what we call the quadruple bottom line for us. And it's not just about what we do, but it's how we intervene or how we provide our assistance to the micro, small, medium enterprises that we work with. And at the heart of this, parang like, we talk about parang like, wait, there. So parang like, we call it talaga parang design is malasakit. And it's really having that, it goes beyond empathy, because we feel that malasakit or compassion is really moving things beyond just feeling, but it's really changing that feeling into action. And this is basically how we go about designing with malasakit. So another statistics, actually this from the European Parliament. So 80% of environmental pollution and 90% of manufacturing costs are the results of decisions taken at the product design stage. So we feel very responsible as the designers to keep this in mind when we talk about working with MSMEs, when we talk about developing new products for them. And it is a conversation. So parang like, it's product design or design in general. It's not a conversation that is dictated by a designer, but it's a conversation that we have with with micro enterprises, with small companies, and really, parang like, aside from like, okay, like the decisions that we make, and parang like, now that we're going into like parang like a more evolved or eco-conscious approach to design, and of course businesses, parang like business will say, oh, why are you making us go down this route of green entrepreneurship or being more eco-conscious? Because there is a market. Siyempre, like when you think about it, a lot of the businesses would ask, is there money in this one? Is there a business to be taking an opportunity in terms of like, is this something that I can build my company on? Or if not the whole company, a collection on? So this is based on a 2023 report, sustainability report done by Alibaba. So, and somehow the survey also got a lot of respondents from Asia and the Middle East, primarily because a lot of the reports that we get on sustainability was very much concentrated on the global north, right? So, but how about, like the global south or Asia? How do we parang bring our voices into this discussion on sustainability? And so, like, on the average, there's 73% of consumers really want to lead more sustainable lifestyles. But in Asia, then we're higher than the average, right? So we're at 87%. And in the Philippines, take note, we're at 93. 93% of Filipinos that were surveyed want to transition into sustainable lifestyle. But ang problema nga lang, or like the big problem or the big block or like obstacle for a lot of Filipinos that want to do sustainable lifestyle or make sustainable choices is either yung it's not available to them or it's just too expensive. Okay, but again, there is business in being green entrepreneurs. This is a Bain and Company study. I think this was in 2020, but we took it out of a WGSN report or white paper called Create Better. So in Southeast Asia alone, there is an estimated $1 trillion in financial opportunities by 2030 when you look at the green economy. And this includes, again, not just like for MSME opportunities, but even in renewable energy, in green tourism. So it's not just about the products that we make, but it's in the services we provide, as well as the way we generate our resources or resources that we need for our daily lives. Okay. And so parang like now to the meat of talaga the discussion. No? So the rise of the green entrepreneurship. So I'm picking a few of the successful case studies of some of our partners, or like parang like when we have mga conferences like these, parang like talagang the speakers that we also invite to talk about their green journey. And this is actually a couple that is a partner of one of the projects that I'm going to be talking about a little later. But these are the creative definitions, the founders of the creative definitions, that is working with agricultural waste, as well as working with weaving communities, primarily in Visayas, to create their products. So what is green entrepreneurship? So parang like so according to the Global Green Growth Institute, which is also a partner of Design Center, green entrepreneurship is a business whose core business model addresses an environmental or social issue. It improves energy or resource efficiency. It reduces greenhouse gas emissions, decreases waste or pollution, protects or restores ecosystems, promotes local culture, or supports communities. So a sustainable business strives to balance the economic, which is financial, social, which is people, environmental, which is all about biodiversity and ecosystems. So this somehow ties in again to our framework in design, which is malasakit and the quadruple bottom line. For the benefit of the business as part of its core business objective, for business to be sustainable, it must not exploit resources or people to improve profit margins. Okay. And this is another way of, since we're in Design Center, we're also very visual. So this is basically a diagram of a sustainable design diagram by CBI, which is a Dutch export promotion or import promotion agency. So it has 12 parts. So parang sustainable design is looked at into 12 parts. So parang the use of recycled materials, use of renewable materials, use of local materials. So you don't have to ship a lot of your materials from outside or from far-flung areas, because it accumulates carbon footprint, right? So, and then there's also material reduction. Can your design be more efficient in the way you use materials so there's less waste? There is natural treatment, there is efficient manufacturing. Of course, there's social manufacturing, so it's fair trade, no? Better working conditions, preserve local culture, which is also again related to, one of the projects rin of DTI, which is One Town, One Product, which is also supported by Senator Legarda. Reduce transport volume, longer lifetime, or lifetime of the product. It stays in use for a longer period of time rather than just those short planned obsolescence that we've gotten used to. Optimize end of life. So this is the 12 principles of sustainable design from the point of view of the CBI. And this is also a few things that we talk about when we approach the designs that we do at Design Center. So one of our favorite companies that we work with, it's actually from one of our also the projects that we're doing on sustainable design or circular design, is Rhea Fernandez Ruiz, who is Rags to Riches. So her business is really, they call it parang eco-social enterprise, because one, she primarily used the retazo or the waste material or the excess material from garment factories, or parang yung mga they call it dead stock in terms of textile. but also she works primarily with women. So she has an artisan academy where she teaches women to, like housewives, to have a second income for the family. And then the work that we do also with Bio, which is a fast fashion company, but she's transitioning to become more a sustainable fashion brand. So we worked with Bio together with Bea and Marga, Bea Valdez and Marga Valdez Trinidad, for a project that we did on Bakong. Bakong is an aquatic plant, which is primarily the source that we use is the one from Cagayan up north, in Santa Teresita, Cagayan, Region 2. And it's really primarily seen by the community as an obstruction to get into the river or the Laguna de Cagayan. And to be able to, and then instead of just pulling it out and letting it dry and rot in the land, how can we use that resource to also bring in additional livelihood to the communities in Santa Teresita in Cagayan? So right now we're working with them, creating ropes, braiding ropes, decorticating the fiber to create into textile, as well as we're developing it to be a biocomposite in the replacement of plastic. So we use polylactic acid combined with the bakong fiber to create like some tumblers, and to be able to maybe create trays to replace plastic, or even to be more eco-conscious in the way that we use as a replacement for plastic, or for the resin-based plastic. Okay. And another company which we also worked with together with the team of USEC Chris is Grinelas. So this is a play on the chinelas, or the slipper. So we work with them under our project of Go Local Otop. And this is really like using our natural fibers to create a more sustainable flip-flops. So using cocoa coir, using water hyacinth, using abaca. So these are, and then like the banana, the covers of the banana stalk. So these are the things that we use. And then instead of using rubber, they use cocoa coir as the undersole of the shoes. So, and this is the one that I talked about earlier, Peñapel. So, and this is what we worked with the Creative Definitions founder. So, Peñapel, it was actually a request that was done. One of the industrial farmers of pineapple from Bukidnon approached Design Center to ask us to look into what they can use, what they can do with the pineapple leaves that is left on the hectares and hectares, thousands of hectares of pineapple fields that is left once they harvest the pineapple, the fruit, and they can it, and then they export it. So this is very different from the Barong Tagalog piña that we use, which uses the red Spanish, but our pineapple project is really using the commercial pineapple that we eat every day. The red Spanish pineapple that we use for our barong, the fruit is not edible, so it's primarily, it's really more decorative, as well as for the use of our barong Tagalog or our piña clothes. But this one is really towards addressing the pineapple, the commercial pineapple fields or like farms that we have in the Philippines. The Philippines is the world's number 2, number 3, depending on the year, depending on the output of our industrial farms, which is primarily in Region 10 and Region 12, or so Mindanao. We are either ranked 2nd or 3rd exporters, global exporters of pineapple. So there is definitely scale in the resources, in pineapple resources. So Peñapel seeks to create value from discarded pineapple leaves through material innovation and product development. That is basically the mission of our Piñapel project. Okay, so basically from what you saw in the CBI as well as what you saw in the approach to a more environmentally conscious production, how we really approached also our work or our research into the use of the pineapple leaves is in terms of like, yes, we do the creation, we do the experimentation of what we can do for how we can use these discarded pineapple leaves. Once we figured out what to do with it, or as an intermediary material, we do protect it. We protect the invention, the work that's done by our team together with our collaborators. Primarily, I mean, again, just to really maybe ensure that the work that we do can also become viable assets for a lot of the companies or the collaborators of our Piñapel project. And then we commercialize. Initially, since this is really coming from the ground, the commercialization is very small scale because a lot of the manufacturers are also micro, small enterprises. But the ambition, I mean, like again, to address the Alibaba, well, the Alibaba report is how do we commercialize it, or how do we make sustainable lifestyle more accessible to more people? So it's about responsibly industrializing the scale of how we produce our Piñapel. So, so this is basically the value chain of how we're trying to address a more environmentally conscious way of production, as well as development of a new business, not for design center, but for the MSMEs that we work with, or the MSMEs that have expressed interest to work with Piñapel. So this is the journey so far. So we really started in 2017, 2018 with Piñapel. It is a long journey. Again, we're competing against a very linear economy or a linear design, and so it's really about even changing mindsets, changing the way people approach the value chain to become less linear and to become more circular. So, and we really like when we started in 2018, the recognition was also triggered when we won an award in 2019 from the DNAD, which is a British design award, which is called For Future Impact. So when we got that wood pencil for our research on Piñapel, and that really triggered a lot more attention into what we're doing at Design Center in terms of like supporting our research and our work in terms of like the agricultural waste. So because of that 2019, I guess, PR value or publicity value of the research on Piñapel, we were able to launch in 2022 our Piñapel flagship exhibit together with our partner in the Center for International Trade Expositions and Missions, and to really create an entire ecosystem of products using Piñapel. And that is basically the commercialization stage. But what we're trying to do is to industrialize it. So we've done a pre-feasibility study of what this industrialized scale of pulp production using pineapple, discarded pineapple leaves would entail. So what we're doing right now until 2024 is we're doing a roadshow together with our regional partners from Region 10, Region 12, and Region 4, and Region 4A, 4B, as well as I think Region 5, is to really create a scalable pulp mill facility. We have a business model for a 2-tonner and a 20-tonner. Of course, 20-tonner would really like help address, and hopefully our dream of replacing, the virgin pulp paper cups and food covers could be replaced by our Piñapel pulp packaging. Okay. So this is just a very small representation of the kind of products that we've been able to produce on a more artisanal scale of production. but we hope to again industrialize the production of pineapple. The creative definitions group that was creating the pineapple sneakers. I'm wearing them now. I wear them to death. It's actually already parang fraying, but so this is the pineapple waste, and the rubber at the bottom is actually sourced from Mindanao. So again, working with local materials, with local suppliers. So this is the proof of our collaboration, and like pineapple. And I wear it. I mean, I wear it to death. I clean it the same way I clean my other sneakers. So it's really parang it's totally completely wearable. I've worn it on days where I have to walk the whole day for factory visits, or even parang when we go on our trips to the regions, and it's super comfortable. Okay. So again, parang when we talk about commercializing, we talk about industrialization, it's all about building a community. And that's why, I'm here promoting green entrepreneurship, because for us to be able to address is it available? Is it affordable? The only way to do that is to build a whole community of green entrepreneurs who can build upon one another, who can create new systems, circular systems of supply, and to be able to make it really maybe the business, the business of tomorrow. I mean, the foundational business of tomorrow. Then we won't be talking anymore about green entrepreneurship, but when we talk about Filipino entrepreneurs, they really have green embedded into their system. Wait. Okay. But before that, I wanted to just show you I'm almost done. I just want to show you a video of how when we talk about design is malasakit, or our quadruple bottom line. Can we just play the video?
Bagay na yun sa akin. Nakikita ko yan na yung produkto lang ng selfie.
Isang panaginip lang na napaka-ordinaryo yung tela namin, na dito lang, ginagawa. Pero pag sa mall ka na, pag dinisplay nila, nakakatuwa din. Ang hirap pero minamahal ng iba.
Pangarap namin na paggawa ng kayabang maging isang industry. At saka sana mag-export kami ng mga kayabang sa ibang bansa.
Your appreciation to all these communities provide them that inspiration to continue what they're doing.
What we also wanted to show through this project is really the Filipino value of malasakit, or the compassion on what we do with the earth, what we do with our resources, as well as how do we provide a unique voice, a unique design perspective in a global discourse of design. It's really a testimony to circular design. So circular design and Piñapel it's not just about what you take away from the soil, but it's actually what you can put back into the soil to make it richer and to make it better for future generations.
Compassion really inspires in what we do. Malasakit talaga. Kasi every time I've seen a patient there in the Philippine General Hospital, especially in charity, nakakaawa. They don't have money to afford for the treatment. That triggers me. Na even for that a single piece of design of product that could give them comfort as well as convenience for their family. Yun ang pinaka-core ng product na Nata de Coco wound dressing na wala sa ibang bansa. Dito lang talaga sa Pilipinas ang
It is with that hope that we would like to chart a course of impactful community engagements, allowing the community to come into its own as we mirror to the world who we are, what we're about, what makes us tick, and eventually yield social returns of investment and the quality of life that we aspire to give our kids and the people we care about.
So, if you want to know more about our project, or parang like the QR code, you can just scan the QR code, and yeah, or email us. So that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Rhea, for reminding us that it's not just about profit, but more of true prosperity, and that can be through the agency of Malasakit Design. We'll have more questions for you later regarding this, but that will be right after our fourth talk. Now, our fourth speaker was the President and Chief Executive Officer or CEO of the Philippine Stock Exchange, or PSE, from 1997 to the year 2000. And during which time he codified the 5-volume rule book of the PSE and completed the PSE trading window for small and medium enterprises. So, among other things that he has achieved, he also co-founded the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry in 1978 and became its president in 1995. Currently, he is the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands. Ladies and gents, please give a warm welcome to Jose Luis Nono Yulo Jr.
Thank you, everyone. You know, the two former speakers, USEC Cristina Roque and the Executive Director Rhea Matute, they both come from the Department of Trade and Industry. The DTI is always being surveyed as the best government agency of the Philippines. The organizer of today's event is Manila Times. Manila Times is the oldest newspaper of the country. They were founded in 1898 during the Spanish time. They were called at that time La Vanguardia, the Vanguard, now Manila Times. So, Madame Bianca Mercado, the president, they've come a long way. I don't know how she got to keep her youth since 1898. The Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands is a little bit older than Manila Times. It was founded in 1886 by a royal decree of the Queen of Spain. You can Google it. So it went through the Spanish period, the American period, the Japanese invasion, the Commonwealth period, martial law, and now we are reinvigorating ourselves towards the future, getting from what we have learned from the past, the tribulations and vicissitudes of the past, using that as the base for the future. We have therefore just crafted an economic compass, Pillars 5, or Ecomp P5, which is this. It is available as you leave the room. It's just fresh from the printing press. It took us almost how many, 10 years debating on the board of the chamber as to how do we navigate the future of the Philippines. Why? You all know what GDP per capita income means, no? Gross domestic product per capita. The total production of the country divided by population is per capita. In the 1960s, the Philippines was the richest country in Asia. GDP per capita next only to Japan and Singapore. Number 2, pinakamayaman tayo. The dollar exchange rate was 2-to-1. Figure it out. So the Philippines was a great nation. So the Chamber of Commerce identified 5 items or 5 pillars that the Philippines was very good at, that made the Philippines a leading economy. And we said, let us go back to the past. History builds the future because the Philippines had a very good past. Okay? So I would like to speak instead of empowering MSMEs towards Economic Compass, Pillars 5. Okay, as an intro, just to make you understand how important you guys are if you want the Philippines to become rich again. Can you imagine, huh? We have been overtaken by Malaysia, overtaken by Thailand, overtaken by Indonesia, and in 2021, we were overtaken by Vietnam. We are now only ahead of Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar. Shame on us. It is your challenge, therefore, to make the Philippines rise again. Can you overtake Vietnam? Can you overtake Indonesia? Or shall we be overtaken by Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar? The answer is with you guys, all of us. And that is what we're trying now to bring to mind. And we'll be launching this. We will have an event, maybe in June, to launch this. No? And we would give this idea to all people in government, to the school, to children, to make them think. Because this is something we have to do for the next 30, 40 years. We will not do it in 5 years. We will not do it in one administration. There must be continuity. Otherwise, the Philippines will continue to sink and become poorer and poorer and poorer. Sad to say. Okay, can we move on? SMEs plus large enterprises plus the government together are the foundations for the country's economic compass, Pillars 5. We have all to work together. Okay? The country is destroyed. We don't follow, it's a lot of things to talk about. We will talk about that when we launch the economic compass. Okay, next. So this is basically the economic compass. And it is in line with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Okay, the UN has set up 17 goals for all the countries of the world. And we are now saying our economic compass will be our weapon to bring us towards the 17 SDGs. Are we okay so far? Okay, next. Forward. The next slide, how do we, before that, anyway. Okay, never mind, let's proceed. So just to go to the left again, no? Can we show the compass again? So the first one is the Filipino and education is a pillar. And the compass where the Filipino and education should go is top of the world. We once had the best education system in Asia. That's why people would come to Asia to study here. Now, our college graduates cannot even speak straight English and cannot even do mathematics. Shame on us. The second pillar is industries and businesses. At one point in time, we were globally competitive. We are no longer there. Shame on us. The next pillar is the government. I will not talk about it. You know the answer. The next pillar is infrastructure and environment. The Philippine infrastructure and environment was one of the best in the 1960s. That is why the Philippines was called Pearl of the Orient. We were the pearl. Today we are the trash. Shame on us. If we do all the pillars and the compasses correctly, hopefully our economy will be diverse, wealthy, self-sufficient. That is where you guys, in your businesses, must gear what you're doing towards those compasses. Okay, next slide. Now, to give you an example, Pillar 1, the Filipino in education, the compass is to become top of the world. We have suggested in our pamphlet 5 missions or implementing mechanisms to make the Filipino in education top of the world. An example would be best education. We must get the best teachers, regardless of nationality. They need not be Filipino teachers, as long as they're the best in their field to teach our students. When China wanted to teach English, they imported 100,000 English teachers. But they wanted the best English teacher with no accent. So they did not allow British accent, Australian accent, New York accent. They wanted no accent. You know where they found it? Midwest of America, Iowa, Idaho, and some Filipino teachers have no accent English. So they want the best education. We should do that as well. Number 2, quality health. From the time a baby is in the mother's womb until 5 years old, if the baby does not get good nutrition, the baby will become stunted, meaning stupid, because the brain is not developed. Very critical. 30% of the Philippine population is stunted. 30% of our people are stupid. And they are the ones who elect people in government. We really got to do something. This is not a laughing stock, you know. We are in trouble. So we got to have quality health. And we have suggested ways on how to do that, from conception till birth. You know, you can have a poor baby, a poor family in the province, but he becomes very intelligent in life because he was fed properly. And you have children of rich people who eat canned goods and processed foods who are stupid. Stunted growth is real. You can Google it, you can study it. That's a problem. The next mission, at least one excellence. We want Filipinos to feel that you must be very good in whatever it is you're doing. When you ask someone, what is your job? He should not tell you, sir, I am only a driver. He should say, sir, I am the best driver in the world. Excel in something. Because if you do not excel, you are a nobody. We have to teach our people that idea. That also applies to your businesses. MSME, large, if you do not excel, you go bankrupt. Next, mission D, patriotic yet global. We cannot participate in globalism unless you first have economic nationalism. If you don't contribute anything, what is your participation in a global world? You're a nobody, you're a slave. Many of our people and the world, other countries, do not understand the meaning of free trade, free competition, globalism. You cannot have free trade, free competition, globalism if you do not think of patriotism and economic nationalism. we can go to another lunch to understand this concept. The world is awakening up, understanding the perils of globalism and free trade per se. It should be fair trade towards free trade. But there's a complete misunderstanding of this concept. That is why nobody wants to go to WTO anymore, the World Trade Organization meetings. They don't want to go to WEF anymore because they are all teaching a little, confusing, not exactly what a country would need to be able to be successful. Okay, the last one is citizenship duties. Every Filipino must know the Constitution, and your rights and duties, and hold government accountable. That is in our ACOM P5. You can get it as you leave, and I hope you sleep every night reading it so that we can make the country go back again. Another example of a pillar. Can we go on to the next? Okay, pillar 2, industries and businesses. This is where you as MSMEs, soon to become large businesses, come in. What are the missions? We're saying, mission A, industries that connect our islands and industrializes the country. Basically, we have identified short-haul aircraft, short-haul seacraft, IT, internet, as very important industries to connect our islands. So we must be number one in software, hardware, manufacturing, in any industries that connects the Philippine Islands. Roads and bridges is part of that too, because we need it. That idea came from the president of South Korea, General Park, when he visited the chamber a long time ago. And we asked him, Mr. President, if you were president of the Philippines, what industries will you go into? I said, oh, very simple, to connect your islands. It's so logical. Okay, next, Filipino-owned companies. Filipino-owned companies must be majority in sales turnover within the country, if not in number of companies. When we asked this question in our board of directors, and this was an intense discussion, the question was, is it okay if all the fast foods in the Philippines are owned by foreign brands? Half of the board said, yeah, that's free competition. Foreign brands won, Philippine brands lost. The other half of the board was frowning, thinking about it. And when we asked them, why aren't you agreeable that free trade, free competition wins? Then they said, but this is our country. So what? If the foreign brands did better, they won. But it's still our country, they said. Ah, so free trade, free competition no longer applies. Patriotism and nationalism has come in. Therefore, we concluded we should have at least 51% of business turnover in the fast foods and our number of outlets, Philippine brands. And if they fall, government, we must help them to become more competitive. Not to give them freebies, but to make them more competitive and better. So nationalism cannot be taken out if you want to participate in globalism. Okay? We have to understand that. Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, China understands this very well. Regrettably, many Europeans and even Americans do not comprehend it, sadly. Okay. Brands, foreign-owned companies. The Philippines should welcome foreign-owned companies as competitors, but we must make sure that foreign companies who come to the Philippines come from many countries, not just from one or two, to avoid monopoly control by just one country. There was a time when Taiwan wanted to come into Clark and take over the whole Clark. And the president of Clark was going to agree. I said, are you crazy? You're going to make Taiwan control the whole Clark? You must divide it among the 100 countries of the world. So we become like a United Nations, everybody together, not one country controlling. That is what China wants to do, control the economy. So we welcome foreign investors, our foreign friends, but we must make sure, the government, that you spread them out. You get the best of what Switzerland can do. Okay, you come in, Mr. Switzerland, or another country, but do not dominate the market. Filipinos must still be in control. That is part of the compass. Next, brands Philippine-owned. This will relate to you. The Philippine government in the past promoted exports based on cheap labor. They forgot that we should have promoted branded names. We must own the brand, because we forgot that whoever owns the brand owns the market. Simple. Vietnam has a new car called the VinFast, their brand. Malaysia, Perodua, Proton, their brand. Philippines, Toyota, Nissan, Geely, other brands. And we killed the Philippine brand, Sarao Motors. Why did we kill that? Francisco Motors. Because we did not think that owning brands are very important. That was lacking in our export development. The Philippine government should get Philippine brands registered around the world, get the intellectual property and the branding rights. Otherwise, we will just continue to supply cheap labor for other foreign brands. Meaning, we will forever be poor. Where our other neighbors are already more intelligent than we are. Okay, next. Expanded Filipino equity. When I was president of the Philippine Stock Exchange, way back when I was as young as the USEC and executive director, I made a survey on how many Filipinos own companies or own stocks in a company, meaning who are capitalists. You know how many? Guess. 1%. Meaning 99% of Filipinos do not own a business or capital or a stock. Therefore, they do not appreciate the need for a company to produce products and services that are competitive. All they think in their mind is, give me a high pay. Because they don't understand it. They don't partake in dividend sharing and in cash dividends or growth of capital, because they are not capitalists. So we have to expand Filipino ownership. In America, over 60% of Americans own companies, directly or indirectly through the stock market. That is why many of them are pro-capitalism. If you don't own anything, you're gonna go communist. The state owns everything, I own nothing. But the state give me everything. But then the state will not have everything, because if the people don't make anything, they will not have anything. So communism imploded. Okay, because nobody wanted to produce anything, they were on relying on government to give them something. Anyway, so that is part of the mission for Pillar 2, industries and businesses. Okay, there are details, implementing mechanisms on how we're gonna do that for the next 20, 30 years. The next pillar, very quickly, is the government. I won't go into that, that's a long detail, but there already are, the best citizens are in government. We just found out how Singapore elected the next president. They made sure he was the best citizen of Singapore. In the Philippines, our stupid constitution says anybody 40 years old can become president. So who do we get? Clowns, actors, actresses. The most stupid people are in government. So we gotta fix that. How do we get the best citizens in government? When you employ your employees in your businesses, don't you try to get the best employee? Don't you? Why don't we do it in government? Shame on us, because we're stupid, stunted. Okay, Natural resources are used for local-based factories. Again, now, Indonesia, for example, if you go there and say, I want to get your iron ore, they will tell you, what will you make out of the iron ore? You can only get raw material to supply the factory of your iron ore. Philippines, we allow them to get all the ore as fast as they can, export to Japan, Korea, China, and then we import back the finished product at a higher cost. Why don't we leverage our raw material to make factories produce items? Stunted growth, stupidity, and corruption. Because the people who give the permit to mine don't want to wait for the person to put up a factory because he wants his kickback. That's the bottom line. If we could continue this, all our natural resources will be consumed. And we don't care about the environment because the guy who has a mining permit is so in a hurry to get all the mines to export and make his money. But if he can get the mine, the minerals, only to feed his factory, he will take care of the mine. He will take care of the environment because he is worried about how to feed his factory. Why aren't we thinking that way? That is how China thinks. That is how Thailand thinks. That's how Indonesia thinks, Malaysia thinks. But we don't think that way. Why? Corruption, stupidity. Wake up. Let's wake up. Okay, next one. Protector of country, that's that should be what they're doing. We don't even know what they're doing. We have a mayor now who is a suspected Chinese spy because Comelec is not doing their job. I mean, it's terrible, Front office should be 5 stars. Should be like a 5-star hotel. You know what it is. You renew your license, very difficult, so that you are forced to talk to a fixer. And the fixer shares the bribery money with the guy inside because they don't want to give you a good 5-star environment. It's all built in corruption. Let's wake up. The 12 traits, that's long, that comes from the United Nations. I won't go into that. The next pillar, pillar 4, we're almost done. Infrastructure. The compass should be heaven and earth. That is what the Philippines was in the 1960s. Pearl of the Orient. Why? God-given attractions were maintained. You don't overpopulate them. When President Duterte closed down Boracay, we agreed with it. But at the same time, we told them then that you should now create capacity limits. They did not understand what it meant. Then we said, if you have a bus with only 25 seats, your capacity is 25 seats. So what is the capacity of Boracay? What do you mean? So we said, is it okay if it is full of people, everybody claps their hand, a lot of money, but right beside you is a sweating guy. Then they said, it's too crowded. Okay, so what should the capacity be? You know what they agreed on, Department of Tourism? 30 square meters per person. Space. So all you do is compute the total square meters of Boracay Beach divided by 30. That's the amount of people you should allow to be on the beach at any one time. So they said, so we have to have a gate. Of course. Otherwise, you'll have chaos and you destroy everything. They are now following that principle in Palawan, in the underground river. They should do it in all God-given attractions. Otherwise, our God-given attractions will end up like Baguio, destroyed. And it's going to happen to the whole country. So we hope government and all of us will take this to heart. We will determine and compute what is the capacity limits, how many people can live there, how many people can work there, and how many people can visit as a tourist. Okay? Numbers is not the key because you want to maintain what God gave you or you will lose it all. Next, man-made infrastructure must be the best. We can copy the best in the world. But there's a long story to that. I won't dwell on it. Islands constrained into advantages. That ties up with industries that connect our islands. Our islands is a problem, but it's an opportunity to go into industries that connect our islands. Minimum space standards, that's common sense. Energy sources are varied and safe. We are not against nuclear power. We are for all sources as long as we can properly make it safe. The Bataan nuclear plant, 660 megawatts by Westinghouse, is the same nuclear plant in Slovenia, Brazil, and South Korea. Exactly the same. And they have been operating it for the last 50 years. Whereas ours, we mothballed and spent $2 billion for nothing and maintaining it at $25 million a month. Why? Why don't we just bring in the Slovenians, the Brazilians, and the South Koreans to run it for us? Stunted growth. So that's missioning. Next, the last pillar, hopefully if we do all this right, an economy with diverse, self-reliant, and wealthy, natural resources, fuels, local manufacturing. We do not export raw material except to countries who are friendly, like Japan, who has no raw material, so we can compete with them, but not all. The raw material must first be used in the country by setting up factories. An economy that incorporates all of these sectors. Those sectors are the primary sector, the manufacturing sector, the service sector, and the knowledge sector. You will find it in our pamphlet, the details, okay? An economy that promotes, rewards, and nurtures people who are excellent, people who perform well, people who set up industries, who employ people. Nurture them, reward them properly, like a Nobel Peace Prize award. Filipinos, again, must be in effective control of the country. It does not say we do not welcome foreign investors and foreign citizens. We welcome them. But since it's our house, we have to be in control. It's common sense. Okay? And hopefully we will be among the top economies. We had a figure on that in the manual. So if you look at all these 5 pillars, each of your businesses can relate to it. The first pillar, the Filipino, best education. You make sure that your employees are the best and that they have the best education to do their work the best possible way compared to our Asian neighbors. Do you know the Singaporeans look down at the Philippines? Huh? They think Singaporeans should manage our companies, Filipinos should be the workers because they're the intelligent ones. Shame on us. Anyway, this came too soon. Can you please go back? Okay. So in the Filipino in education, you can employ that, adopt that in your respective companies, whether you're small, medium, micro, or large. That's important. The second one, industries and business, your business, must be globally competitive. Our earlier speaker said, yung pwede na yan is not a good idea. You should say, ano pang pwedeng gawin para magaling? Globally competitive. You do that in your business. The next pillar was what? The government. Let us all work together to make government accountable, to change the Constitution to ensure a system wherein we get only the best to serve in government. Singapore has a method. If you are a high school graduate in Singapore, you're top of the class, the government will tell you, Madam Roque, you have a very good grade, top of the class. You must be in government. Therefore, you go to college anywhere in the world, the government will pay for your tuition fee. When you graduate, come back to Singapore, 10 years, work with the government to pay back your tuition fee with a higher salary. After that, you can go private. Thank you. So they have a mechanism to get the best of the citizens into government, which we do not have. That's why our government is the worst government in ASEAN. The ASEAN governments, if you talk to them one-on-one, they laugh at our government. In Malaysia, they said, you know, I've been Minister of Trade for X number of years, and I already met 5 of your Ministers of Trade. What is she saying? You don't have a compass. A new minister comes in, the direction is there. The next minister, direction is here. The next minister, direction is there. But Malaysia had one direction, Vision 2020, launched in 1980. 40 years of straight vision. The governments do not change the vision. We should not change the compass. My DTI friends, if a new secretary comes in, tell him do not change the compass. If you believe in the compass, follow the compass. You fight as to who is more efficient in making the compass happen faster. That is what I'm saying, and for all of you, one last word. The last slide, please. As you live your life, strive to find your God-given talents, yourself and your business. Pursue these talents with passion. Passion brings, there's an S. You see, the why Nidis doesn't know English. He's a college graduate. Passion brings excellence. Excellence brings success. Our executive assistant in the Chamber of Commerce doesn't know English because she's a new graduate. It shows you already of what we're talking about. You see how important it is? With that, I end it. Get a copy of this. Join us in the Economic Compass.
Thank you, Nonoy Yulo. May we invite you to sit on stage for our fireside chat. This will be our first set of question and answer portion. And we call on Ben Kritz, the Manila Times columnist, to moderate the discussion. We call back on stage Undersecretary Chris and Rhea from the Design Center to please field the questions. Now, some of you might be familiar or follow Ben's column, Rough Trade, but you can also, if you're interested in reading the editorial, he contributes among 4 people in the company his thoughts on what the paper's position is. So, Ben, perhaps you could now regale us with some of your razor-sharp questions.
This is the redirect portion of the program, and I have a couple of questions for all of you. Let's start with you, Ascott Roque. Digitalization is a big topic all throughout the government, and of course, you know, you have your own context with it. What I'm curious about is what sort of support is being considered or being offered to MSMEs, because you have a lot of very small businesses. Digitalization costs money. People have to have, you need some nuts and bolts. You need a computer, you need an internet connection, and a lot of small businesses, small entrepreneurs I know personally, the closest they get to doing anything digital is on their phone. So how, what can the government offer, or partner with somebody to offer to, get these people some equipment to actually, do digital business, in an effective way?
Okay, for the government, digitalization has a budget. For the DTI, we've got a budget. So we're able to come up with ways for them to be able to use different avenues example, like for me, we have now we're coming up with DTI Bagong Pilipinas Marketplace. We're going to come up with, in my department, the B2B, which is B2B Marketplace, which will be the largest and the largest marketplace for Filipino products in the country. So for anyone that's looking for products, let's say, example, I'm a restaurant and I'm looking for, let's just say, strawberry jam. So I punch in strawberry jam, then all the suppliers of strawberry jam comes out. So that's one. And then the Department of Trade also comes up with their own e-commerce site, meaning those that cannot afford their own e-commerce site can join. And then we also give them access to some learnings, or we also give them access to TikTok. We set meetings with them for TikTok, for Shopee, for Lazada. And aside from that, we also give mentorship like through digital learning now to each and every regions using, we call it the negosyo centers, which is 1,000 centers all over the country. So that's where they hold now this mentorship learning through digitalization. And there's the Department of Trade and Industry has budget for digitalization for people that want to use it to earn money. Other departments also have digitalization. It's actually one of the main projects of the President is for us to really go digital.
Okay. I'll move on to your colleague here. You talked a lot about green entrepreneurship. I had two particular questions, but I think the bigger one may be interesting because sustainability and green entrepreneurship, if you will, is it depends on what the entrepreneur is doing. But I'm curious, are there a set of broad principles that you can teach to anybody, regardless of, to put them on the path, regardless of what they want to do, in their entrepreneurial journey, but to put them on the path towards a sustainable business?
Well, as far as Design Center is concerned, we do talk about sustainability, not just from the green entrepreneurship path. And even the way we talk to the companies when we talk about product development, a lot of our conversation doesn't even go about, it doesn't just stay within the product development stage. We look at what is available in the community. We look at the strength of the company. So it's not designed just because we dictate it, but it's really finding what is even the passion of the founder of the company. Because we know entrepreneurship can be will be very demanding. And if your passion is not in this business, then it's easy to give up. So it's really about, again, finding that that passion, or reigniting that passion for a lot of the enterprises, or for those that are going into business, really finding out what is their strength. It's not because, they see one company and then I want to do that exactly the same thing. For us, it should be based on the capability of the management or the founder. What are the resources available, so that it becomes more of, it really becomes a dedication. I'm trying to remember it becomes a vocation rather than just, it's not just a business that I want to copy from someone else. So it is, yes, passion, vocation. So it's really a calling. And if there's anything, entrepreneurs, aside from those that work in as employees, entrepreneurs, it's 24/7. Even if the whole world is asleep, you can dream about you can have dreams or nightmares about your business. So if you don't have that passion, or if you don't have that love for what you're going to be doing, it's not going to be sustainable. It will test you, and it will test you hard. So that question of sustainability, it's really being there for the business, doing everything you can to make that business work. And I think, for us at Design Center, and even for us at DTI, you need to find what you're passionate about, what you're willing to lose sleep, and even to lose your savings. And that's a very big ask. But that's also about ambition. If your ambition is just pwede na, then you're not gonna make it through the very hard times. And we've been through very hard times, even from the pandemic. So you really need to make sure that your ambition is high. I mean, it's not about, I mean, you know, again, it's not just to be the best business in barangay ABC, but the best business in the province, region, or even in the Philippines. That's got to be the ambition. Your ambition needs to be high, because sometimes you don't reach it. But if your ambition is high, I mean, like I remember one of I guess I consider him my first boss. You need to aim for the sky, because if you only aim for the treetops, you don't reach it. Then you're just, I mean, you may have barely gotten off the ground. But if you aim for the sky, and if you at least reach the rooftops, then at least it's much higher than it should be, right? So you gotta aim bigger to become, I mean, like, you know, and have that passion to sustain the business.
Okay. Now, Mr. Yulo, I could probably keep you busy all day with questions, but I want to pick up your little booklet and go through it first, you know, before I ask you some of them. But a couple of the points that you brought up, and I think most everybody would agree with a lot of what you presented there. And just start at the top. You know, everybody knows the education system here is a big Achilles heel for the country. But how do you fix that when the way it's governed, they can't even decide on a medium of instruction, or apparently when to start the school year? From one year to the next. And I mean, that may be a rhetorical question on my part, but do you have any suggestions?
You know, that's exactly the point. What you're raising is why the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands came up with an economic compass and everything that we showed you. Because before, we were #1 next to Japan and Singapore. We did things correctly. Our professors, our schools were the best. In our government, we had statesmen, real government people. But through the years, it went down the drain. So we are now in a position, as you said, how do you fix it? I'll give an example. In the 1980s, when Prime Minister Mahathir was first elected Prime Minister, the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines was invited by the Malaysian Chamber to meet with him and to talk about Malaysia, Philippines. So when we went, I was in my 20s, 30s. We walked into the office of Prime Minister Mahathir. He was not in the office, so we were waiting for him, okay? The Malaysians invited us because they wanted to learn from the Philippines how come we are richer than Malaysia. Okay? We were waiting for Mahathir. I looked down the window. I saw in the garden, landscape, 2020. I didn't know what it's about. All of a sudden, Mahathir walks in. So I was surprised with his entrance. And I was a young punk. I was, you know, not afraid to talk. So I said, Mr. Prime Minister, what does 2020 mean? And he says, that is the vision of Malaysia, to become an industrialized country by the year 2020. But it was the 1980s. So as a young punk, I retorted. I said, but Mr. Prime Minister, that's 40 years from today. Will you still be around? He laughed. And he said, Vision 2020 is not for me. It is for Malaysians who are 20 years old, in their 20s, to devote the next 40 years of their life until they retire at 60 to make Malaysia an industrialized country in 2020. The government, the citizens must have one vision, one compass. In the Philippines, when a mayor comes into town, he will build an island in the center of the road. After 3 years, the next mayor will tear down the island, because both mayors want to give construction work so they get their kickbacks. So we have a roller coaster development, or like that. the secretary of DTI is now, of course, saying Bagong Pilipinas, no? Our old Ferdinand Marcos, the first, already said New Society. Okay, so it's really a build-up. But during the time of Marcos, before he was taken out of office, he came up with 10 basic industries, which was so important. And regrettably, the Aquino government took it down because of politics. What is the 10 basic industries? Under the time of Secretary Bobby Ongpin, he looked at an airplane. What materials do you need to make an airplane? Metal industry, chemical industry, rubber industry, plastic industry, glass industry, paper industry, he named it 10. So he says the Philippines should undergo and have 10 basic industries so we can manufacture the parts which you guys can manufacture so that we can build an airplane. Because if we cannot make the chemical, the plastic, the paper, how can you build an airplane? That is why, and then when Aquino came in, because it was Marcos's idea, they took out the 10 basic industries. I hope Bongbong Marcos, through you guys, tell your DTI Secretary Pascual, revive the 10 basic industries of Ferdinand Marcos Sr. If we did not put that aside, we would now be competing with Malaysia. We would now be building airplanes as well. No. So the answer is really very difficult. Unless we change the national psychic, we educate people for the next 10, 20 years to think economic compass, we cannot do it. Your very relevant question. And its government is one. Let's revive the 10 basic industries. Let's revive the economic compass, because that is what made the Philippines rich. If we don't do that, nothing. We become poorer and poorer. Laos, Cambodia would overtake us. That's a given. I'm willing to bet $1 million of my money that Laos, Cambodia will overtake the Philippines if we don't adopt the economic compass and the 10 basic industries of Ferdinand Marcos. That's the answer. Sorry.
Okay. I think that's probably about all we have time for. Does anybody have any final thoughts that they want to share before we take a break for lunch? How about you? Ladies first.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm on the Undersecretary for the MSME development, so I really take care of the growth of the small and medium enterprises. So I'd like to say that for us, or for them, the time is now. We're done with the pandemic. It's time for us to now get up and start moving. If others can do it, we can do it too. Yes, the government is here to help us, but we must also learn to help ourselves. The others have moved forward, some faster than us, so if they can do it, we can do it too. So let's strive for excellence, let's strive for perfection, because I'm so sure if you do excellent work and perfection is your goal, you're gonna get somewhere. And let's always be positive, and let's always try to see the best that's ahead of us. There's a lot of information that we can get in the internet now, so let's make use of this. For us, if we're from the small enterprises, let's try to have a goal. Let's try to be medium. How do I get there? What do I need to get there? So for me, yun ang gagawin ko. I mean, I need to help myself first before I can help other people. I need to help the people around me first before I can help other people. So let's make the best of whatever we have, and let's make the most of our life. As guys, we only have one life to live. Let's make the best of it. Sayang naman, God has given us this kind of life. So let's make the most out of it. Good afternoon, and in behalf of the Department of Trade and Industry, thank you for inviting us here.
Okay, how about anybody else? Hey, I have a question. Can I get those in a size 13?
What's
30. I mean, like, I know the European sizes because we just ordered one for one of the buyers.
Okay, no, that's big.
I think
It's
44
about,
or...
no, that's about
I think-
actually 48, 49.
Yeah. I don't
They're
know.
big.
Yeah.
They're big. Yeah, those are great.
I think they're 30. Yeah.
That is my speed, but I have such a hard time buying shoes here because you don't make shoes for people my size.
Maybe we can accommodate just one question here from the table.
Good morning. My name is Alu Arana with 9PH. I'd like to ask Ms. Christine, because there's recently one-person corporation, how is it going to help the small, medium businesses? And I'm taking this opportunity to ask Ms. Rhea already, because while we have a lot of help going on, we understand the advocacy regarding helping the communities, but recently the prices of these products have skyrocketed. Do you also have a facility where you financially advise them that it's not just one-off, it has to be a mass-based thing? Thank you very much.
Okay, for financing, let's say you want to avail of financing, you can go to the SB Corporation. I'm the chairman of that corporation, and that's actually it's called the Small Business Corporation. It's really a bank that used to help the MSME. So to apply is quick, and also the process is also quick, because the main goal of that bank is to help the MSME. So don't hesitate, but you can check in their website and go to them directly. For the one-person corporation, I mean, whatever you feel is best suited for you. For some people, they prefer one-person corporation because they're really the only one. But for some, there are many in a corporation, so they prefer many. So it doesn't matter. Yeah. For a corporation, is different from a sole proprietorship, because pag sole proprietorship and there's a problem, they get all your assets. But if you're in a corporation, if there's a problem, they don't get the assets of the incorporators. So again, in the website, you can see also the different advantages and disadvantages, and then you can choose which one suits you best.
Would Executive Director Rhea like to comment also?
There, it's working now. Okay. To address your question about, like, is it parang like available, right? There are, like, parang depending on where you go to source it, parang like, there are yung pricing ng pieces really change. So don't go to, I mean, baka like, then our suppliers will get mad at me, or like parang all these artisan communities will get mad at me. But don't go to the, like the trade fairs or like the bazaars that are targeting the A crowd, because the profit margin there is really high because those people don't negotiate their prices. The prices, I mean, and it's okay with them. But if you go to a different trade fair, which a lot of it is actually the DTI trade fairs, where it's really you get to source from the manufacturers themselves or the weavers themselves, then the pricing is much lower because that's more for an accessible market. So it's really about choosing the best outlet that you want to get from. It's like, again, I mean, like it's like buying groceries. Different groceries have different price points, right? Because some cater to the AB crowd, some cater to the CD crowd, so which the prices are more accessible. So if you're really looking for a deal, you go straight to the maker, and there are trade fairs that are going straight to the that give you access to the maker, and that's normally the DTI, and even parang like we just got a request yesterday at the Likha Trade Fair, which is happening in the PICC Forum in June, provides access to the artisans, and the pricing there would be I presume like more accessible than going to maybe those parang like like that medyo social na trade fairs or like mga bazaars that are really catering to a whole different market. So I mean, like, be a smart consumer and choose the best platform for you. But yeah, I mean, like, but we can't naman rin also deny the artisans or the manufacturers that may have different distribution model options, right? So maybe in the others, they can afford to increase their profit margin so that they can afford to lower the profit margin in different trade fairs. So, I mean, again, this is market forces, and these are just the things that, hopefully a more informed consumer can also decide how to get their products. So.
Yeah, there's also such thing as wholesale price. So, of course, if you buy one, then iba yung retail and wholesale. So, this is a practice in other countries also. So, if you ask for wholesale price, especially if they're the manufacturers, you can get, kasi bulk buying na kayo. So, it should be a good price.
So we hope that answers your questions. I'm afraid that's all the time we have, but we do have some questions from the crowd and from our reporters. I hope it's all right with you. They'll be approaching you a bit later during our program. But meanwhile, let's all give them a round of applause for all the answers and the tips. It's all been very helpful. Please remain on stage as we call on to come up also our President and CEO, Ms. Blanca Calilo-Mercado. And to accompany her, we invite also our Vice President for Sales and Marketing, Rhoda Alonso-Zabat. So that's it for our first fireside chat for the day. We hope all the recommendations and the strategic tips that they have given would be helpful for everyone's business plans. Now, Ms. Blanca and Ms. Rhoda wish to present to you plaques of recognition as a memento of the Manila Times appreciation for your time and insights. So for the messages from Senator Loren Legarda and your presence, Undersecretary Cristina, Executive Director Rhea, and of course, Jose Luis Nonoy Yulo Jr., we offer you tokens of gratitude. So thank you, Senator Loren, Undersecretary Cristina, DTI Design Center Executive Director Rhea, and Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands President and CEO Nonoy Yulo. So that concludes the first half of our program. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the fifth talk of the day. We shall be introducing our next speaker. So welcome back to the Manila Times Micro Enterprise Forum 2024, titled Empowering SMEs and Generating Opportunities. Now, our speaker for this afternoon moved to the Philippines for EAC in 1992 to establish distribution systems for Philip Morris. He has been a marketing director for Dole Packaged Goods, Hawaiian Tropic, and Coca-Cola. He has also been chairman and president of the European Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines. Now he is concurrently the International Workplace Group, or IWG, country manager for the Philippines and the senior vice president for Asia Pacific North. Ladies and gents, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Lars Wittig.
Thank you very much. I think there should probably be a clicker. I think I see one here. So, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm going to be talking literally to the micro, small, medium enterprises. I want to look into your toolbox, and I want to put some very important tools that will be very handy, that will help you grow your business, more likely than not to become successful, get more business faster, and probably even at a better price. Which way should I point with the clicker? Oh, that way, down there. Yep, they are pointing. Oops. Yep, very good. Basically, what we're offering is a national and a global network of business centers. Business centers with co-working. We are IWG, we are the world's leader in hybrid working through more than 4,000 centers with flexible workspace in the world. And as you will see later in my presentation, this year we'll be opening center number 40. That will be up in Baguio, by the way. So not just globally, 4,000 plus, but also in the Philippines, 40 plus. We were barely 20 locations just last year. And Sheila, how many centers did we have when you were heading up our business? Just 3. So not only did I have to fill big shoes, also with high heels after Sheila joined. I would like to point out I have 2 team members in here because I have to leave after my presentation. But if you have questions, then 2 poster examples of young, brilliant talents here in the Philippines is Wisdom. Could you raise your hand? And Angel. They can definitely answer questions that you may have. Okay, micro companies, small, medium enterprises. If you have an office in one of these buildings, you will look like $1 million to your target customers, right? But should you take the one over here where we have spaces and the penthouse with co-working, or should you take the Sulik building or Netlima or GT Tower? You should take all of them, and then the 36 others that we have. That's basically what it is about. And this brings you, many of you would be looking at, how can I sell into the big multinationals that are in these towers? Well, I will literally put you at eye level with those companies. I think I need a... Very good. So besides the fact that we would like to be in a fantastic, beautiful building, eye level with our target customers, we also need to get there. And whether it is employees or SMEs, micro companies, either way, we are losing productivity between point A and B. We used to say location, 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 at least in Sheila's industry, right? Real estate, but it has very much been disrupted by transportation all the time that we are wasting there. So we want to make sure that you have a solution where we actually can help you even when you work from home or when you work from, if you take an office at one of our locations, but also anywhere in between that you can just drop in. I was going to Baguio Friday morning. I had a live TV interview through Zoom. So on my way up there, that was on ANC, I dropped into our center in Angeles City, opened my computer, did the TV interview back in the car, and then I was in Baguio to present to 400 brokers up there same day. That's a perfect example of hybrid working. Click. So in Metro Manila, we certainly got you covered with 27 locations. And unlike the few colleagues we have in the industry, we are not just aiming for the low-hanging fruit, meaning the obvious CBD areas of Makati and BGC and Ortigas. Of course, we are there too. I think we have 8 or 9 centers just here in Makati, including the floor above us right now as I'm speaking. We have 1,600 square meters. It's a Regis center. But we are also all over Quezon City. We opened an HQ. We have different brands. An HQ up in Quezon City last week. And we opened a spaces here in Makati also last week. And also last week we opened down in Malate. And last year we opened down in Las Piñas. I mean, there's literally nowhere that we are not, because we want to be near you. And we all know how much we are commuting here. Actually, a survey has shown that what do you like the least about your work? And people say, the commute. So that we certainly have the answer to. And I will, yeah, thank you. Now it switches before I click. Just like we should be in Las Piñas and Cavite, where we also will open later this year, and Baguio, and like the outskirts that are related to Metro Manila, we are literally everywhere, and I'm sure I can say things off the record now. There's barely any media in the room, right? But I can't help including that corner down there, because I think everybody here agree that is part of the Philippines. And I do enjoy going to Kinabalu. They do not laugh when I say that. So anyway, but we opening our third center in Davao. Let's take Davao as an example. We opened the very first center. It's the third we're opening this year. The first one we opened 10 years ago. I've been everywhere in this country setting up distribution for Philip Morris, and I know that if I'm going to be successful locally, I need to have a local partner. So the Carrie Lactameo, the Floriendo family, Damosa Land, they were looking on how to invest into their community, so they made the investment and we opened a Regis Center. At that time, 10 years ago, we pioneered this flexible workspace into Davao. It was the biggest Regis center in the country. We filled it up almost instantly. 85% of the customers were doing business for the first time in Davao. So we became a catalyst in there. But what was interesting for micro, small, medium enterprises was how fast the local entrepreneurs saw us as a launching platform to do business nationally. They quickly realized that becoming a member of our company in Davao, they could actually avail of our entire network, because if you are a member one place, then you can use the business clubs everywhere. So it's very easy for an entrepreneur in Davao then to suddenly set up a meeting in Cagayan de Oro, or in Cebu, or Iloilo, or Metro Manila, later on become regional, maybe even global. You have the whole network globally available to you. Click, yep. And then there's the co-working part, because what we do offer, I should just mention that we actually have over 80% of the Fortune 500 companies as our customers at multiple locations globally. And that means that you as a micro, small, medium enterprise, you are part of creating this very vibrant environment in each and every center in the co-working area, because you have very small startup companies mixing and blending and interacting with the largest companies, the largest international Fortune 500 companies. So you have all these different sizes companies, extremely different nationalities, extremely different industries, extremely different ages. I mean, you will meet old stuffy people like me, and you will see me interacting with the Gen Z and millennials in blue jeans and white t-shirts. And why? Because it's extremely valuable to me in order to prevent becoming obsolete before I hit retirement age. They do call me Lolo Lars, so I guess it is countdown. But in order not to become obsolete, my generation need to learn from Gen Z and millennials. And millennials, especially millennials, have proven extremely successful, and millennials know that they're probably more successful than their experience justifies. So what do we see there? They're actually seeking mentorship. So they're very grateful talking to me. They have no clue how grateful I am learning from them. So there was one ambassador there was a Chinese ambassador. He said to me, "Mr. Wittig, you are doing the right thing, because know how very good, know who much better." And that kind of relations economy, I think Philippines is even more relevant here than in almost any other country that I worked in, and I moved country 10 times. So this is what a co-working area could look like. This is spaces in Korea when I opened that center. just to, as an eye-opener, how fun it can be in a co-working and how to get people to talk to each other. I called the importer of Harley Davidson and asked if they could get a motorcycle up into the penthouse, and then we placed it here, and then everybody walked in scratching their heads, what is that motorcycle doing here, and they were talking to each other. And then when you think about the history, the story behind a Harley Davidson, suddenly we had a theme for a community event. And that is what we have. We have for young professional community events with speakers and so on, including myself. I teach them how to network to young people. We have Women in Business, the European Chamber. That chapter is chaired by Sheila. We have environment. We have all kind of events all the time, and it is really bringing people together. And that kind of community belonging is actually something that everybody are seeking, and especially younger people. And if they're more like Lolo, Lars here, if they're not seeking it, they will become obsolete before they hit retirement age. Next slide, please. So, yeah, I basically already said it, but IWG, maybe I should just highlight the brands. More of you might know Regis, because that was what we started with originally. That was also our first location in the Philippines, was a Regis. That was opened in 1998, and it still exists. Then we have Spaces and we have HQ. So we have multiple brands. It's a little bit like the world of hotels. You have the big fancy boutique hotels. That would be Spaces. You have Marriott, Grand Hyatt. That would be Regis. Then you have Zeta or Park Inn. That would be HQ. So we have for every different kind of pricing, price point, investment, and so on. But what it does mean also is, regardless which one that you choose, I forgot to mention the price of all this, by the way, because why are these very expensive looking solutions relevant for a micro, small, medium enterprise, a startup? Let's start with the money. The bottom line there is at a cost. If you want to have your address up here in this building, this place, 6,500 per month. Pesos, not dollars, pesos. 6,500 pesos. Some of the centers are all the way down to 4,700 pesos per month, some a little bit more. Either way, you can register your business then at our address. So it will never look like you're working from home. Even if you're working from home, it doesn't look like you're working from home. And it is difficult to sort of like become that success if it is too obvious that you're working from home. Or like we had one customer, this is a good story. It was a small, tiny travel agent based in Caloocan. They wanted to try to cater to the big international firms here in Makati. They found it very difficult from Caloocan, so they took the smallest office they could get with us. And I remember when they moved in, and they're not with us any longer, but what happened during the years with us was just that their business boomed because they were literally at eye level with their target customers. Their target customers, they started to come over to pick up travel documents and being like, wow, business must be good. What an amazing, beautiful office, by the way. And the day they left, I guarantee you, they left in a much bigger car than the day they arrived. And it's really nice to see how we can facilitate these things. So the network is very important to do so. The brains are very important. We are there to help. It's really not expensive at all, and it means that you do not have to be a specialist in real estate and sign a lease for many years, because this is very, very, very short term and is only a service agreement. It's not even a lease. No capital investments. You can do what you have set out to do. That is, put all your energy in your expertise and whatever resources you have in terms of money. You don't have to tie it up in an office. The person I know best who availed of this, there was a hot dog salesperson, entrepreneur in Europe. He was British, still is, by the way. And he was down in what the British would call Europe. They think that they are not part of that. And down in Brussels, his hot dog business was starting to do so well that now he needed an office. And he found out, he was so frustrated how arrogant the landlords were at that point, where the real estate market was apparently very hot, and they felt he didn't qualify to become their customer. And even if he did, he had to sign up for so many years and then invest in not just furniture, but walls and doors. What was going on here? So he created the first Regis. So that's our founding CEO. I'm talking about Mark Dixon. And he is still that crazy hot dog selling. He's not selling hot dogs anymore. But he could be, trust me. He is still that entrepreneurial, spirited, I mean, it's so much in his DNA, and it shows. So we never forgot where we came from, and we relate extremely well to the largest and the smallest companies. Next slide, please. Yeah, I mentioned earlier that we have 82% of the Fortune 500 companies, so here are just a few examples. What is going on in the industry in general is that in the workspace, conventional office leases, companies are still to this day downsizing. When their leases are up for renewal, they will hand over 1 or 2 floors and keep the rest of them. If they're big enough, right, then they keep the rest. But it's not because they're employing fewer people at all. They're not employing. They're employing many more people. So what is happening is they're all gravitating over to flexible workspace, and that is why so many investors are coming to us and saying, well, this time it's not a hotel we want to build and have somebody bring. This time it is flexible workspace, because that's the way that existing and brand new office buildings, that's the only way that you can make product development. The way that you reinvent office buildings today is to bring in flexible workspace. And with us, you will get almost 10 million colleagues to interact with, because that's how many are relying on us to go to work every single day. And we have a back office of over 1,000 people. Coincidentally, it is in the Philippines. So, but anyway, they cover the whole world. They're just waiting to service you. So next slide, please. And that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lars. Wittig, we unfortunately you can't join us for the fireside chat later, but perhaps maybe some of your team can also join and help answer. In the meantime, thank you very much, and we hope to be able to have you again. And now for our next speaker. She has nearly a decade of experience overseeing nonprofit organizations and community programs that include education, environmental, and agriculture impact areas. For over 6 years, she has worked in Guatemala, where she founded and developed a nonprofit organization that provided sustainable economic and social programs, especially for women. She holds a master's in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, Harvard University, and a master's in international and developing economics from the HTW University of Applied Science in Berlin. At present, she is the managing director of Friends of Hope. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Ilusion, Farias.
Thank you for having me. I'll be talking a little bit about what we do and how we put SMEs, or especially micro SMEs, into the work that we do from a nonprofit side. One of the biggest problems that we see, not only here in the Philippines but worldwide, is lack of opportunities for people, or people who want to do something but don't know how to do it, don't know, have the right connections, don't know even where to start. So we've taken the approach as Hope we want to create opportunities for Filipinos. Especially because as a nonprofit, we see a lot of programs that don't last a long time, or just come in, give something, the money runs out, and then all that work, all that infrastructure, all those things kind of go amiss. And the truth is, the key for us is people, and the people that we connect. So I'll talk a little bit about what we do and in the scope of how we put in those opportunities for people. Next slide, please.
Just a little bit about us. I hope you guys have seen our water or know who we are, but we're a little bit more than that. So we're actually the first we're actually the first B Corp in the Philippines. So we also started as a small company, or we're still a small company, but we also are the first company to donate 100% of our profits into building classrooms. We are the first company to take responsibility for our plastic footprint. In the Philippines, this is before EPR passed and all these things. Now everybody's doing it, which we're really happy about. And we're the first Philippine to have a non-plastic water bottle as well. This is on our corporate side, but I'll be talking more on kind of our nonprofit side work. So if you go to the next slide, this is our impact. As you guys can see, we've built about 128 classrooms. We've impacted 41,000 students, and we've contributed more than 94 million pesos to the education. That clearly is a way to support everyone, right? Education is the pillar for anything that we want to do. But more than that, we require for all our builds to hire local workers. And the reason that we do that is transfer of skills. We're hoping that, if these guys learn extra skills, either in painting, electrician, all these things, those are skills that then they can take back home. Well, they'll stay in their community and be able to either build their little business, create more work, empower themselves as well. And this is one of the few ways that we try to do that in all of our programs. It is not the main focus, but it's something that we can weave through everything that we do. But where we have a little bit more with micro-entrepreneurs is in our agriculture and environment. So we work with small-scale coconut farmers in Mindanao. We've actually distributed up to 1.4 million coconut trees in Mindanao. By the end of this year, it will be over 2 million trees. I'm not sure if you guys know, the Philippines, 1/3 of the Philippines population depends on coconuts for livelihood. It is a big, big number. But the kicker is that a lot of the trees were planted over 60 years ago, which means those trees are going senile and can no longer produce. So there is a huge need for coconut trees in the Philippines. So we work, like I said, with only small-scale farmers. And when we started working with them, there was a couple of things that were needed. Access to inputs. Small-scale coconut farmers, after small-scale fishermen, are one of the most vulnerable populations in the Philippines. They tend to be the poorest of the poor. So saying that they can go buy their own trees, it's really unlikely. Those trees are really expensive. A coconut tree, if you want to buy one, costs more than 85 pesos. So it becomes, it's taxing, right? One doesn't really do anything for your income. So this is where we came in. And we've worked with over 25,000. We distribute about 100 trees per farmer. So in that way, we're promoting the coconut industry here in the Philippines. We're helping these small farmers. But then we thought, well, what can we do more? All these seedlings that we're buying, most of the seedlings in this country come from big producers who dedicate themselves into buying seedlings. But the skills of growing seedlings, the coconut farmers already have. This is their realm. So we decided well, why don't we start buying seedlings from the small-scale coconut farmers? They can use it as intercropping. They have the land, they have the space, and they have the input already. So with that, we started with one. We now have about 70 of them. And we're trying to raise the amount of coconuts that we buy, mostly from them. But that's but like I said, that was something that we try to do in everything that we do, because it is so important. Even if we're not here tomorrow, they now know that they can sell seedlings. When the price of coconut is low, they can use this as an income as well, right? Without counting all the environmental benefits of these plantations. And I'll go through the programs a little bit more, but in the environment, we set waste to cash programs. And our waste to cash programs are centered around women. And we wanted the women to be able to make an income through them, to understand that they can be part of this value chain and they can make a business out of it as well. So I'll run a little bit how our programs work and how those things are weaved in it. So if you go to the next slide, please. This is just where we work. As you can see, coconuts mostly in the Mindanao area. And then classrooms all over the place, and our waste to cash program, which are the green little houses, which are supposed to be sari-sari stores, are in mainly in Luzon and Visayas. Next slide. These are a couple of our partners, just to give some credibility. But if we go to the next slide, sorry, next slide, please. So Hope in a Classroom. Like I said, this works in two ways. If you can go to the next slide, it's either through donations or through the sale of our waters. But for us, one of the biggest importance is the community, right? We work with DepEd, but we also want to have influence on who we hire and make that knowledge transfer everywhere we go, to have those skills transferred to other people. Next slide, please. These are a couple of things of what we do. We partner with a lot of different brands, with Starbucks, with the National Bookstore, to donate classrooms and to do things. And this is where we primarily get our funding from classroom, as long as through our water sales. Next slide. Hope in a Farmer. So if you can go to the next slide. So this is what we want to do. With a small-scale farmer, we want to provide access to inputs or free inputs, maximize their income, improve farmer practices, and increase market access. So we found ourselves in a unique position where, after a couple years, we were the biggest we were planting more trees than anybody else in Mindanao and the coconuts. We actually plant more trees than PCI, the Philippine Coconut Authority. And there's thousands and thousands of farmers in need. So this was, how can we help? And the big challenges are always the same, right? It's access to market, it's money, inputs, and better practices. How do you get education? So we've been working with small-scale farmers to do exactly this. We don't have the resources to do this even at a bigger scale that we wish, but we think that by providing the coconut seedlings, we can also provide at the same time education on how they can produce better, they can improve their farming techniques, and we can collect information and at the same time distribute information. So one of the things that we do is we provide access to the coconut pricing whenever that is available. So they are in a better position to negotiate against the middleman, even against the coconut buyers. Next slide. So this is, if you see this way, this is the way that we distribute seedlings. So where we thought we would have a great impact would be in identifying PCA certified suppliers. Because when we distribute seedlings, we didn't want it to be any type of seedling. They needed to be verified so the quality of the coconut is good and they can get a better price. But there's no suppliers. So there's where we saw the opportunity for our farmers to become suppliers, to join that value chain, and not only sell to us, but sell to whoever is interested in supplying coconuts, whether they're big or small. And like I said, we have about, I think 60 farmers who are now supplying this. They make about 300% more than they did while just growing coconuts. So that is a big change. And this is only 20% of the seedlings that we're distributing. We actually want to get up to about 80%, up to 100% if possible. But we're hoping in the next year, actually, that goes up to 45% of all the seedlings that we purchase come directly from the farmers themselves. So that money goes into them. And what happens is very unique, especially with women. The small-scale women farmer is always looking on what more they can do. So they start intercropping cacao, and then the cacao is made into pastillas, and the pastillas, they can sell it, right? They are the ones who understand more that entrepreneur, at least that is our experience, who understand that. We have farmer women who she was like, yes, I can grow those seedlings. She took the money and she started a mushroom, growing mushrooms because they're a high yield crop that doesn't take a lot of space, which is something that they don't have as well, right? So they understand these things. And more than what we're giving, it's kind of the idea of like, hey, you can do anything, right? You have what you're learning here, you can apply it to a bunch of different types of things. Next slide. And this is a couple of the partnerships that we've done and why we've been able to distribute seedlings. We do Hope in a Coconut with Vita Coco. They have supported 100 demo farms in the region with us and distribute seedlings. We do a Million Tree project with GCash, and we've done with different companies tree planting activities as well. We require all the companies that work with us to let us implement these things, right? That we can buy the seedlings from the farmers. They have to include training. They have to include monitoring, evaluation, and those are kind of the conditions to work with us. We want it to be empowering. In the case if you receive 100 coconuts, that it's more than 100 coconuts, that you are in a better position than you were before, not just because of the coconuts, but because of the knowledge, access to markets, and access to different ideas of what you can do. Next slide, please. And our Arlington Data program. This is our last program. This is a waste to cash program. The Philippines is the #3 contributor to marine plastic waste in the world. If you look in all of our oceans, rivers, and everything, it is a huge, massive problem. But what we saw is that actually plastic bottles is not the big problem because that has a monetary value that actually gets picked up and recycled. But all the sachets, all the soft plastics, all those sando bags, that's actually what is ending up everywhere. So we thought, well, what can we do? And we were like, let's put a monetary value into that, the same way that plastic bottles have a monetary value. And we were inspired by the network of sari-sari stores. There's a sari-sari store in every street, in every barangay. They are pillars to the community. They're visited already by the community. And so we were like, if we work with them and set up collection sites with sari-sari stores, people who are going to go buy shampoo or rice or whatever can also bring their plastic from home and make a little bit of extra money on the plastic at home, and we can start creating behavioral change. So that's kind of our program and how it works a little bit. So you go to the next slide. So we set up these community centers, which we call Aling Tindera. The community comes and sells their plastic to this woman. She then bales it, stores it in a container van that we provide, and then when the container van is full, we come in and we haul it from the container van and pay her a margin of it. So for example, if we buy 2 pesos from the community, we'll buy it from her at 250 pesos per kilo. Then we grab the plastic, we take it to the processors and make sure that it's removed from nature and never ends back in nature. So that's just a little bit of how it works. But what's been really interesting to see is we wanted to create this big network of micro-entrepreneur women who are dealing in waste. And we have about 140 sites. 140 sites nationwide. On average, these women are making about 45% more than they did before with this program. But what's been really inspiring to see is the way that some of the women come in and have brand new ideas, right? They were like, well, I can increase my collection if I go talk to these 4 businesses. There's a 7-Eleven there. There is this in my community, and like, I'll pick up the trash from them. They'll sort it and make money off of that, right? They'll go into events. They start thinking about it differently on how to go about it. We have a couple who have recruited their husbands to go door to door to pick up the waste, to encourage people to segregate. They are the ones who are pitching in barangays and telling people waste needs to be segregated, do this, we'll pay you for it. So they have been kind of the driving force behind this program. Next slide, please. These are a couple of partnerships that we've done. We also work with SM. Initially we started in Manila, but now we are all over the place, and we do plastic cleanups with different bands as well. Next slide. So yeah, we want to be the generation to spread hope. We think that's important, but for us specifically, it's driven by people. It's not necessarily driven by us. It's driven by the people who support our water, but also the people who participate in our programs. And we want to change that mindset, and we want to support their entrepreneurial spirit that they have built in a nonprofit, from a nonprofit angle. Thank you.
Thank you, Yulo, for bringing hope to MSMEs, particularly coconut farmers. We'll be asking more questions and invite you back on stage in a bit after our 7th and final speaker for today. So Our seventh speaker is the Academic Program Director of the Asian Institute of Management, or AIM's Executive DBA program. He also serves as the Executive Director of the AIM Rizalino S. Navarro Policy Center for Competitiveness, and he is an Associate Professor for Economics at AIM. So his areas of research include MSME competitiveness, entrepreneurship, and impact of regulation. So ladies and gents, please welcome Jamil Paulo Francisco.
Hi, is this working? Maybe I can give it a try. Yep. So, yeah, I went for the lemons and the lemonades. No. When I was briefed for this this gathering, I was told that why don't we talk about resilience of MSMEs, right? And how they can build resilience not just during COVID, the pandemic, or other black swan events, but also economic resilience, disaster resilience. Well, resilience, depending on whom you talk to, for some it's a good word, for some it's a bad word. Certainly it's a word that's been used again and again and again. But I do feel that there's a lot about resilience that we can learn from what happened, guys, 4 years ago. So 4 years ago was the pandemic, right? In 2020, in most economies, obviously business closed, MSMEs closed down, and very few MSMEs were put up during the pandemic. Why would you open a shop when there's huge lockdowns? In fact, I might give you an exact number. 58%, supposedly, according to the World Bank, 58% of countries experience that. But what's interesting is that there is a remaining, 42%. In 42% of countries, they actually saw an increase in new business registrations. The US was one of those countries, the UK was one of those countries, and the Philippines was one of those countries. There was a 50% rise in new business registrations in 2020. So what possibly could be in that lemonade that these MSMEs put together when life threw lemons at them? That was what I was going for. Anyhow, next. So, are we in crisis mode? I mean, the pandemic is over. Are MSMEs still on the edge? Are they still, is resilience still important to them? We did a survey less than 8 months ago. Next. Asking MSMEs. I think we surveyed down there 500 MSMEs in NCR and Calabarzon region, and we asked them what in their minds were the major obstacles to their business success. No? And we categorized it as not an obstacle, a minor obstacle, a major obstacle, or a severe one. No? And if you notice, the one with the most orange or red na bar, no? Yun yung pinakamalaking obstacle in the minds of MSMEs. And what you see here is, at least 8 months ago, it was cost of raw materials and inputs. Inflation is one of those crisis situations that we are currently facing. And if you look at the numbers, the Philippines is still one of the relatively higher inflationary figures. No? But also, I think a close second in this list will be access to inputs and raw materials, or supply chain, which might also have to do with inflation. And I look at you with open eyes because I'm trying to see if you're going to confirm this, because if you are the micro, small, and medium enterprises that we talk to, if these are still the things that keep you up at night. But aside from these, and the usual access to markets, technology, and all of that, next. Next, please. Is this one right here. Well, that also, but it's always been like that for us. No? But intense competition. Huh? Which, I'm an economist, by the way. I don't know if they introduced me as such. And for economists, competition is good because it's always good for consumers. But a lot of micro, small, and medium enterprises are feeling that pinch because in their view, there's just so much tough competition. And that also is something that's crisis triggering. That also is a challenge. Next. And just to scare you, economists, dismal science, no? So many things affecting your business today. Changing rules, Right? New taxes. Well, the Marcos administration announced in February no new taxes for the rest of the administration. Let's see. No? De-risking. De-risking is a big word that countries outside the Philippines are using now when they say that they want to diversify their value chain. Sure, if you're a micro, small, or medium enterprise, engage in import, export, right? A lot of countries outside the Philippines, especially in Europe, are looking at new suppliers. Right? Especially away from Russia and China. So is that an opportunity? Is that a threat? It certainly is a challenge. A challenge is simply something that you have to require effort to in order to meet. Of course, economic, inflation, interest rates, you know that. Social, no? Your consumers are becoming smarter. They are now more concerned about whether your company is sustainable, is transparent, no? is circular in terms of circular economy. But there's also shifting priorities. Gen Z thinking different from millennials. And if you've been doing your business for 60 years and so far it's been working, we don't know if it's still going to work 60 years after or 6 months after, because priorities are changing. And not just that, priorities in terms of where people want to work, right? Is it the location, transportation? Actually, I wanted to add something else there, connection, no? Because the place of work should have great connectivity. And you, as a small business or a medium-sized business or a micro business, have to think about how to earn enough revenue to pay for your wages today, how to compete against that store right in front of you, plus all of this. So that's pretty bad, isn't it? How do you thrive in a situation like that? Next, please. Okay, first of all, somebody mentioned earlier, government should support us more. True enough, maybe, because MSMEs like yours make up a huge chunk of the economy. You already know this. 99% are micro and SMEs, 99% of firms in the Philippines. You generate total employment of about 65%. But, next slide. 99% of firms in the Philippines are micro SMEs. They generate 64% of employment, but they only generate 1/3 of gross value added. It's a fancy term for saying ambag into the economy, means the value that's created in the economy. So what that means is that you are not as productive, I know it hurts, no? Not as productive in providing value to the economy in terms of value added. What that translates to you is that your profits is not as large as the larger companies. And I suppose that makes sense because after all, small businesses, next slide, are held back by what scholars and academics like myself call the liability of smallness. Meaning by being small, there are so many opportunities, resources, platforms not available to you. Of course, you cannot compete. If you're micro, you can't compete with small. If you're small, you can't compete with medium. If you're medium, you can't compete with large. Because of all of these things. You already know that. Next step. Next slide. And if you're talking about being an MSME in the Philippines, on top of everything we mentioned, you add all of this. You're in a developing country. Not only do you have limited access to capital, if the country itself has limited access to credit, right, then what more for a micro firm or a small firm? Okay, so I guess at this point of the session, it's like, let's just close shop. We cannot be resilient. No? Next slide. And yet, MSMEs have thrived. In fact, all of the things I mentioned add to that a pandemic. And yet, there were 50% more new business registrations. I'm not here to talk about are people being desperate, did they lose their job, what's their motivation. Doesn't matter for me. But what stuck in Ilu's presentation earlier is that there are some entrepreneurs who are like, sige, gawin natin. In other words, let's do something. Right? Let's take action. Let's find some way. In Filipino, we call it discarte. No? So, next. I think it was the introduction, it was mentioned that I teach in the MBA and the DBA. When we teach MBAs, right, these people who pay good money to study how to run a business, in essence, we are teaching people how to run a large business. You go through what you call a feasibility study exercise. It's all about managing the operation so that you have SOPs. It's all about a business plan. You can't even get a loan if you don't have a business plan. But all of that academically, assumes something. And it assumes that the way to pull together resources to become an entrepreneur is to go through this process. Acquire the resources, inputs you need, tao, humans, financial, physical, right, skills, build your capacities and capabilities, develop competitive advantage, this is MBA speak, and you create value. Okay. But how many of you entrepreneurs have always worked that way? Have you seen this before? Can you characterize when you started your business to have done it this way during the pandemic? I don't know. Maybe let's offer another slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. But I don't know if you agree with me that what makes entrepreneurs entrepreneurial is another kind of behavior. And if you can read what I put in the funnel. Entrepreneurs are people who have a bias towards action. Meaning, just because it's not available doesn't mean they can't make it work. I don't have to be a big company to be able to sell the things that I did. Diskartehan ko. I'm going to use my own resources that are available. An entrepreneur is someone that puts together stuff which they have and puts it to new use. In fact, again, Ilu mentioned this a while ago. You own the piece of land and you're planting and you have coconuts and you harvest coconuts. What do you have? You have land. And you have coconuts and coconut tree trunks that apparently could house, I'm making this up, the mushrooms. I don't know, is that really how it goes? No. But anyway, exactly. Anyway, but it's something like that. But, just below the coconut trees, I suppose that's where you have your seedlings and whatnot. So in other words, you work with what you have and you recombine the resources you have to address new challenges. Recombine the resources you have to address new challenges. I think it wouldn't be difficult for me to say that for all of us in this room during the pandemic, that's what we did. We made do with what we had and made it work. People who study entrepreneurship call that entrepreneurial bricolage. Bricolage is derived from a French word called bricoleur, which means handyman or handy person, meaning a workman. Sorry, that's a PC language. Work person, no? Meaning hindi engineer. Why? The analogy is, as an engineer, you ask an engineer to build a table, they will draft a plan, they will ask for what resources you need, they will hire carpenters, they will get funding. You ask a handyman in the workshop person will just say, okay, what do we have here? You put it together, whatever is available. Literature, next slide please, in the past, looked at bricolage, and when I say bricolage, it means bricolage of all of these things. Your current inventory, the tools you currently have, the land you have, the people you have, your employees, your networks, ideas, the ideas that you have in your head, your skills. No? In the past, scholars who study entrepreneurship said, this is desperate action. This is something you do during a crisis only. And in fact, it always has been, how do we make sure MSMEs aren't in crisis mode so they don't have to behave that way? Increasingly, though, in the last 3-4 years, and this is why I'm so excited about it, is that people who study entrepreneurship, including myself, are beginning to look at, hey, wait a minute, what if bricolage is not second best? What if it is what entrepreneurship is about? Next slide, please. And so maybe you can recall that back in the day, before you became this 60-year-old small business, when you were just starting, you were doing all of this. You were making do with what you have, taking advantage of your personal connections, have a bias towards action, all of these steps in discovering opportunities, in actually developing it, and exploiting it. Now, the hypothesis is that if you're a small business, and you're a small business in a developing country, and you're a small business in a developing country where there are different dynamic shocks all over, then you should be a business that is able to do bricolage, and a business that is not ashamed of doing bricolage and talking to policymakers. Then policymakers should institute programs and policies that embrace bricolage. You give access to credit, but that requires micro, small, and medium enterprise to come with a business plan. Of course, one solution is train them to do a business plan so they can take out a 2 million peso loan. But if they have revenues of only 200,000, 2 million is too much. So in fact, what should be done might be some sort of making do with the resources you have. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. And speaking about finance, no, I think supposedly everybody knows this. Access to credit is one of the most difficult challenges that small businesses have. In our survey, we asked them, oh, okay, how many of you tried to borrow? 73% tried to borrow in the last 2 years. 98% was able to borrow. On the one hand, wow, that means that there's no access to credit problem. Next slide. But actually, a large part of that came from informal sources. Again, a familiar line, a familiar statement. Old me, meaning before the pandemic, before I got interested in entrepreneurial bricolage, this would be a slide that I would say, oh, see, everyone in government, everyone in policy making, this is problematic because they always borrow from informal sources, which means that higher interest rates, unsustainable, so forth and so on. But if you ask yourselves of why do you borrow from informal sources, on the one hand, it might be because it's difficult to get from banks and whatnot. But on the other hand, how many of you do that because of the flexibility it offers? So that maybe the reason we don't go to banks is not because we don't have the documents, maybe it's that also, maybe it's because it's difficult to get loans, but also because they're not as flexible. So an increasing interest area now is also what they call financial bricolage. That maybe in the banking sector also, banks and microfinance institutions have to embrace this idea that for entrepreneurs, their strategy would tend to be, I'll borrow this small amount from my credit card because I just need to buy a certain machine, which I just want to see if it works. I don't want to buy a super big machine just yet, just like a big corporation would do, because I don't know, there's a risk involved. And then I'll borrow from a different source for another thing, and only borrow when I need it, right? So, next slide. If it's, next slide. Next slide. Oh, sorry, go back. Yeah. So if it's true that bricolage has worked for you during crises, should some of the things which allow you to bricolure be something you actually embrace to be more permanent? Again, I was asked to talk about how can MSMEs become more resilient. Then maybe bricoluring, right, is the way to become more resilient. Sir, ano na yan, common sense, you always do that. Okay, if that's common sense and you always do that, then why is it that the skills that we're trying to develop and the policies and protocols we're trying to put in our companies are forcing us to be less of a bricoleur and more of an engineer? So my hypothesis and proposal is, shouldn't we make the things that we adapted to a higher level during the pandemic more permanent? Flexibility, adaptability, bias towards action. Because one thinking is, there's a crisis mode. When we're back normal, change your habits again. But is that something that might actually hurt us? Because the world is increasingly more VUCA, right? Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Next slide. And I think the World Economic Forum thinks so. I heard about this talk that I was giving. But World Economic Forum 2021 gave this drivers of future readiness for SMEs, not for big business, for SMEs. And if you take a quick scan of what they have here on the screen, you'll see a lot of ideas which are actually bricolage. Ability to redeploy resources. Diversity of, access to valuable resources, risk-taking, proactiveness, innovativeness. So even the World Economic Forum, although they didn't call it bricolage, actually is kind of giving us that idea. In order for us to be future ready for uncertainty, we need to be able to have that flexibility. So maybe what's important for us, next slide, is try to come up with an acronym. Next slide, yeah? Is one, become a bricoleur. Embrace that. Embrace what makes an entrepreneur entrepreneurial. And you can ensure that that bricoleurness is instilled, institutionalized in your firm by creating a longer-term culture of openness. That it's not just a one-off thing. Next slide, please. Next slide again. There you go. So at the individual level, you know this, no? Encourage expression, authenticity among your workers, and let's try to make it go beyond soundbite. No? I mean, during the pandemic, for many of us, including in our education institution, for example, there was a remarkable amount of autonomy all of a sudden. No? Because, you know, you're at home. You're working through the pandemic. Your boss is not breathing down your neck to see if you're doing what you're supposed to do. And yet, because there was no choice, you were given that autonomy. And yet, for many of us, it worked out. So maybe we should continue that, right? At the firm level, do we create an environment that values ideas and experimentation and flexible arrangements? No? Next slide. At the industry level, that's also where we have to ingrain some sort of flexibility. And that flexibility is better when we use our networks. Because when you talk about bricolage, you can bricolage physical resources, financial resources, but you also bricolage your networks. Itong kilala mo is also apparently a potential business partner. This other person who sells merchandise X, Y, and Z might also sell your merchandise A, B, and C. So if you want a more flexible bricolage environment, you need to grow those networks. Next slide. Third is bricoloring, my hypothesis, can be done even more easily when you're digital. That's what I meant by going online. Sadly, next slide, most small firms have not yet, and based again from our survey, have not yet gone truly online. But please take this with a grain of salt. When I say go online, next slide, I don't mean just go online. Next slide. Because a lot of times when we go online and we digitize, what we really are just doing is we're doing, what did I say? Sorry. We're trying to do old things in a new way. Meaning, parang yung mga kailangan documents na i-sign, you have to sign documents and it's PDF form, right? Or Word form, and then you have to copy and paste it. It's like, what? It's a new way of doing an old thing. But to truly be able to have that openness, flexibility, adaptability, which you can get from digitalization, you need a full transformation of doing new things in new ways. And why do I say going online and digital is very friendly to being an entrepreneur? Because you can make more mistakes cheaply, right? You don't necessarily have to hire the best ad agency to do testing, A/B testing, right? First and FGDs before a promotion or ad. What you do is, you're in Shopee, Lazada, SM Store, I don't know. You're online, you have the data, you can just experiment. You have a Facebook page, will it work better if you have somebody with blonde hair showing the food that you're selling or somebody with brunette hair? You can do both and see which kind of ad elicits more clicks. So by going online, you can actually change your behavior and change the way you do your business by becoming more flexible. And finally, last but not the least, next slide. Yan, this is the acronym I wanted to form. No, boom. Meaning, let's go, let's do this. No, make it happen, right? I mean, let's not put a good crisis to waste. Now, there's so many things happening around us now, an evolution in the way we do business, the way we do work, what consumers want, what employees want. Let's not waste it, right? Because in fact, there is an amazing amount of openness and flexibility now at the individual level, at the firm level, at the industry level. I think now is the time to embrace it. Because if you've been a small firm for 60 years, you could stay small for 60 years, but this also might be the best time to try to go up, right, the level and expand your horizons because of all of the crises that we have. Right? Sorry, so thank you very much. I don't know if I did overtime or what that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamil. Actually, maybe we can jump in and go with the momentum that you've built up and invite Yulo to join you on stage so we can proceed with the questions from Ben regarding the points that you raised.
That was very interesting on both counts. So appreciate that. And it's funny, as I look at the questions I jotted down as you were both speaking, it seems that I've gone from rather specific to rather broad. So I hope I can smoothly, work in a couple of different contexts here. I'm very interested in the coconut replacement program, because that's something we've known about for years, that is a big issue with that agricultural sector in this country. The trees are very old. They need to be replaced. Just out of curiosity, I think because people probably don't know, and I haven't heard a number for years, how many trees does this country need to replace?
As of like 2022, it was calculated that 80 million trees need to be replaced. So actually the government released a figure that they were looking to replace over 100 million trees. And this is just to keep the competitiveness of the Philippines in. This isn't even...
That's just a break even, more or
of
less.
what we currently have.
100 million trees.
Hence, 1/3 of livelihood from this country, one way or another, is derived through coconuts.
I wonder what kind of carbon sink 100 million coconut trees would represent. That's another aspect of this. I'm sorry, that's something I'm like very personally interested in.
So we do calculate. We calculate this very conservatively and not with very in-depth methodology, but under our calculations with the U.S. using the U.S. forestry calculator for coconuts, 1 million trees does about 600,000 tons for its lifespan of 50 years. That's the productivity of a coconut tree.
So more or less 10,000 tons per year per million trees, which is pretty substantial.
Yeah,
that's a benefit.
Yeah, definitely. For us, that is a great by benefit of what we're trying to do. It's supporting livelihood and also the environment, right? There's a reason coconuts are called the tree of life, and there's a reason why so many small-scale farmers use it.
Now, along those lines, and honestly, I wasn't leading to this question, but this has just occurred to me as we've been talking. Is your organization either considering or working with anybody or aware of anyone who is looking to actually use that carbon removal asset, from what you're doing and from the coconut as what it is?
Yes. So I don't know if anybody knows a lot about carbon or about being certified to sell carbon credits. It is extremely painful, tedious, and I think you'd probably need a couple PhDs to actually develop the methodology and understand it. We're actually going through the process right now with Gold Standard to credit certify. And the specifics of what we want is that we want carbon to be looked at as a crop for the farmer. So in the same way that they get their coconuts and can sell it, they can also sell that credit to a company or to anybody else, and then the funds go to them. The hurdle is that it's thousands and thousands of small farms, and it's not one big land mass. So that is one of the big things in the methodology. There's actually no real methodology developed that does small scale together. The other thing is we do not own the land. The land is owned by each farmer. So then that is another hurdle. But yes, we are in the process of doing that because we want the money to go into the farmer, because the farmer is the one who's sequestering the trees. They're the ones who take care of it, and they're the ones who should benefit from it.
Okay, that's all very interesting. I'm probably going to ask more about that later. I had one other like weirdly specific question, but these now I assume that the trees are being the seedlings that you help the farmers get, they're replacing trees at a rate where they're not like denuding their entire farm and having to wait for 10 or 15 years. So they have an opportunity to, to still earn from their existing trees, plus do some other things. But I'm curious, what happens to the obsolete trees?
So the way that it works for farmers who have obsolete trees is the process is you have to plant the new tree next to the obsolete tree. And the tree then grows. Once it reaches a certain state, you then cut down the old tree. That is the best practices over the tree. what we do with our farmers is that they need to go through through PCA, which is the Philippine Coconut Authority, because they have their own regulations on how to cut down senile trees, and there's a whole process. There's a fine, which I didn't know before joining this work, that if you cut down a tree, there's a fine for it. And so we have resurfaced that bylaws because we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. We've seen in some planting programs that it grows, you cut it all off, so you can then pitch for more growth. With us is you can't cut the trees down at all that we distribute, but one of that makes us unique is that we do M&E for every tree that we planted. So every year we visit every single farm that we distributed trees to make sure that those trees are still there and they're growing. If they're not there for whatever reason, whether it's mortality or anything else, we are aware of fires, we're aware of typhoons, we're aware of certain things, but we will report them and they will have to pay fines, and they have a contract with us acknowledging that. So then it puts a different barrier. We can't arrest people, or we can just pass them over, right, to somebody else, but it becomes a little bit more formal in the sense of you're getting something, there is a responsibility to keep that something.
Okay. I'm going to have to get in touch with you. This is just too much interesting stuff going on here, and I'm glad you shared some of it with us. Now, let's think some broader concepts. One thing that's stuck out in the survey that you showed, that the biggest red mark on there was referred to intense competition. Where that's considered a hurdle by a lot of entrepreneurs, and of course it's obvious to any of us. Just walk around our neighborhood. You'll have a street where there's 1, 2, 3, 4 vulcanizing businesses all in a row. Or even, I just noticed it yesterday walking through a little arcade shopping area that's nearby me. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ladies with a small booth, and they're all selling the exact same kinds of organic supplements and shampoos and cosmetic products and stuff like that. So it seems to me that the entrepreneurs is intense competition is a problem. A lot of them, they're creating their own problem because there's a lot of monkey see, monkey do go on. Oh, this person's opened a barbecue stall or whatever it is. I'm going to do the same thing. So how do you teach diversification or and teach people to think about other ideas, I guess, is what I would be asking, because that seems to be the problem.
I suppose there's a very complex answer to that also. On the one hand, the resources are scarce, so you'd rather go for something which seems successful based on what the other person is selling. Two, not only is the access to those resources not available, the risk might be too high because they have so little to actually risk on diversified portfolio. But on the one hand, I guess a lazy answer would be, as an entrepreneur, you just got to do that, right? You got to find a better idea. But so I suppose for us, it's like, okay, how do you enable an entrepreneur to actually, one, take that risk of being different from the other? Or somebody doesn't have a test case or whatnot. No? Or is there just a better way of selling the same product through better packaging? Is it differentiating through branding or being more sustainable or whatnot? So I think here the idea is about how do you help small businesses experiment more? Because the diversification, maybe they want to do, but if it's too risky, they're not going to do it. So how do you allow them to take a risk that's not too risky? On the one hand, that's what this whole bricolage idea is about. I mean, you don't necessarily have to move from product A to B, from a piggery to Pogo. Some read that part of the news. Anyway, but you might just diversify in terms of like the size of the bundle that you sell. right? If you're online, then is it putting together a bundle of X, Y, and Z, or just X and Y? Do you have different colors? No? Some of the SMEs that I got to talk to was like, okay, a huge discovery what they had was just the colors of a particular product they're selling. That maybe blue is better than red or whatnot. So the space for diversification is there. It's just a matter of how do you make it cheaper for them to diversify despite the risk. And my hypothesis is that going online, because you have more information, the secret there is not just the market access, but the information you get right away from the experimentation might help you. What differentiates, for example, a seller on Shopee or Lazada that sells a lot compared to someone that sells the same thing? It might be because the other is using data. Right? They're really looking at the data of the customers when they're buying, what kind of bundles work, what kind of discounts work. So it might really have to go to that detail of like, how do you teach them how to handle data, how to experiment at a low cost.
Okay, and that kind of leads to or relates to my other question that came up when I was listening to you is, are entrepreneurs, maybe here or maybe everywhere, it's been a long time since I was in economics classes, but do they tend to access markets or tend to look for opportunities to create markets? You know, and is there a balance there, and can you tell who is good at one and who's good at another?
The classic perspective there is that there are two kinds of entrepreneurs. One is opportunity seeking, the other is necessity driven. So the lazy way of dichotomizing that is that the necessity-driven one just works with bricolage. That's the old perspective. So whatever I have here, oh yeah, I was a cook in some restaurant before, so I'm going to open up a carinderia, right? A food service restaurant. The other one is an opportunity-seeking one who took a short course at AIM, no, right? Or who went online and searched for, and they will try to create those opportunities. But many studies now are beginning to show that, you know, a lot of necessity-driven entrepreneurship can shift to more opportunity-seeking ones, and it's not really a black or white line, right? It's a very gray area, right? So in that sense, does an entrepreneur create an opportunity or find one which is just readily available? I say it's really both. Right? In a sense that you see everyone selling roast chicken, and so, okay, I'm going to open a roast chicken store. But can I experiment with the chicken so I make it ube flavored? I don't know. I mean, so it's how do you enable them to make that diversification by lowering the risk? No? And I guess my key message a while ago was we've been doing the same support mechanisms we've been doing for decades now to help SMEs. Maybe it's working, maybe it's not. So maybe it has to do with the assumptions we're making about what SMEs need. Maybe it's also us as educators telling SMEs, oh, you have to, we call it professionalize, put structure, do a business plan, no? Do all of these things that, you know, the big companies do. Or maybe do we actually enable entrepreneurs to be entrepreneurs first and experiment, no? and bricoleur, and that was the key message I think that I wanted to send out there.
Okay. Well, I have the same question for you, but again, yours is perhaps more specific than yours. What in terms of policy or institutional support, but particularly policy from the government, what would help what you do? Not me, if not you in particular, but the kind of work that you do, and maybe have, encourage more organizations to get into, the same mode as what Hope does.
I think for us, the policies, and I think people just need to be seen. And a lot of the time when policies are made, they're made here at a very abstract level, not seeing with a lot of the time with great intentions. But there's a lot of implications when it comes into actually implementing them and who it affects, right? For example, EPR waste is a huge topic right now. And everybody is talking, and there's a lot of talk about informal waste pickers. But in a lot of the conversations that I'm in, we actually did a study with the World Bank and interviewed a lot of waste pickers. They do not want to be formalized, a big chunk of them. But in all of them, and all the organizations and all the conversations, it's like, we must formalize them. We must formalize them. It's not taking into consideration their time, their social conditions, right? A lot of them are single women with a lot of kids. If you formalize them, they might not have the time to do a 9-to-5. And then they get fired, and then they're in a worse position than they were when they had the flexibility to work and the amount of hours that they had to work. And I think in the sense of that, it's very important for people who are starting their businesses or have their business, right? It's that flexibility. They might be doing something else. They have other implements. And I think that that is not seeing. So in us is to, when you implement policies, to see how that actually affects the bottom of the pyramid, because those are the people who tend to carry a lot of those things, right? This country doesn't, most of its farmers are small-scale farmers. In waste management, most of the people are informal waste pickers. So to give it the importance that it has to those people and be people first focused, but at a ground level, not in a theoretical high level, I think is important.
Okay. And for you, Professor, what would a Bricoleur-friendly entrepreneurial policy, or part of the PDP perhaps, or whatever, what would that look like?
Actually, I want to double down on what Ilu had mentioned in terms of the informal sector. Of course, the informal sector, we don't like the informal sector because some of us have a notion that, okay, the regulation is not there, so we can't ensure consumer welfare. There might be crimes, there might be abuses and whatnot. And the intentions of formalizing are very good. But to echo your point, you cannot force that upon certain players that are in certain situations. EPR is just one example of that. If you look at how large corporations are required to report how they recover their waste, if they're not allowed to work with informal sector groups, then there's just no feasible solution, it seems. So maybe in the same vein, supporting micro, small, and medium enterprises, because I know a usual objective is to help micro businesses formalize, right? Which has all of, again, its good intentions. But does it have to be completely black or white in that sense? And this is so interesting to see because we have countries like the Philippines where the informal sector is huge. India is another example of a country where so much employment is actually in the informal sector. And I like that example because if you look at the size of the economic growth in GDP of India and its potential also of becoming eventually the second or third or fourth largest economy in the world, a lot of that is in the informal sector. So how do you unlock that? Does that mean having to formalize it or not? And the reason I mention India is because as an economist, I don't have an answer. But the Philippines has this advantage of taking a look at that other country, which is India now, and how it might actually deal with that whole idea of, do I have to formalize every sector? And what is formalizing? What does that mean? Is it registering? Is it having to pay taxes? Is it, what is formalizing? So we maybe have to informalize formalization.
Yeah, or maybe there has to be a spectrum of formalizing, where your waste pickers would be down on the basic end, where at least we know who they are and they have, basic health insurance and social protections, but you let them do their thing. And, maybe a little farther up the ladder, there would be some more stringent,
Which unfortunately becomes more difficult now when, there are so many initiatives globally of how do we meet certain standards. And it's unfortunate that sustainability and the green space is in that area as well, where of course you want to certify that everything is green. But if you certify, there are certain thresholds. And of course, a threshold is set by scientists who say that if you don't meet this threshold, there will be no world to save. No? And yet, how do you force that upon the informal sector, which can only take smaller steps?
Okay, that we could spend a day on that topic because I think that I agree with you with that there should be more flexibility and more bottom up decision making in setting and standard setting. I think we have a couple of minutes here. Does anybody out here have any questions?
Would anyone like to raise any points? Because otherwise, Ben, what we can have is key takeaway messages for enterprises and entrepreneurs, both the ones here and those would be able to read about what we have discussed here today, or to watch the recordings that will be broadcast or streamed later on. Are there any questions that anyone would like to ask?
No? Okay. Yulo, how about a final message?
We're in the field. I'm in the field a lot. And for me, it's just there's so much potential. And especially here in the Philippines, people are so creative and resilient. To your point, there is an entrepreneur mindset. And I think that that's something that we shouldn't strive to get rid of. Right, it is a competitive advantage of being like, well, I have these three things. What can I make out of these three things? And we see it every day, and we see the people being successful, at least in our organization, are the people who have that, and they're like, oh, that worked great. Let me do this, and they don't mind also sharing the knowledge. So I think the human side of it is extremely important, and I think it's very particular. I mean, it's worldwide, but I think there's something very special in the Philippines of in the mindset of that resilience. And I think resilience is a good thing, not a negative thing, right, for who we are.
For me, I'm going to stop pretending to be an entrepreneur, because I'm not. I only try to pretend to study entrepreneurship. So my message would really be more for everyone else who aren't entrepreneurs, meaning bigger corporations that work with entrepreneurs or empower them, governments that support them, academics, educators, the media. Maybe we should reconsider thinking about what we assume entrepreneurs want. The entrepreneurs behave in a certain way. They have their own objectives and intentions. Most important, they have their different priorities. Is it really high income, high revenue, diversification? Is it short term? Is it long term? I think in the last 100 years or whatever that we've been trying to support micro, small, and medium enterprises, maybe there might be a better way, because if we haven't been very successful in supporting them at this point, then maybe we should be more open to looking at what they truly need, instead of imposing what we've learned in 10, 20, 30 years we say is what they need. When you say access to credit, what kind, when, how big, how small, let's let them decide. When it say access to technology, what kind of technology, when, how big, how small, let's let them decide. Instead of giving these laundry list of what we think will be better for the small players.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you both for sharing with us today, and it was good. It's good to hear from you, and like I said, I think we're going to be in touch again.
Let's give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Jamil and Yulo. May we ask you to remain on stage as we call back our President and COO and our Vice President for Sales and Marketing, and Asia Pacific North Senior Vice President Lars, Friends of Hope Managing Director Yulo, and AIM Economics Associate Professor Jamil. So with these plaques and tokens, the Manila Times President and CEO, Ms. Blanca, and Vice President and Sales Marketing, Ms. Rhoda, thank you for empowering MSMEs and generating opportunities. Thank you to our speakers for helping to build the hustle muscle, so to speak. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being part of the Micro Enterprise Forum of the Manila Times, empowering SMEs and generating opportunities. We hope to see you again in our next fora. Have a great day ahead. Thank you very much.
Bye.